The Honorable the Speaker.
The Minister of Energy and Energy Affairs.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I'm honored to make my budget contribution here in the lower house. And I have an advantage that I have two bites of the cherry because I will also be in the upper house. And I'm also very privileged to open the baton, as it were. This is supposed to be a 5-day debate, so I will call it a test match. So I was expecting pace like fire from the opening bowler. Somehow they felt it was a 1-day or a T20 and they opened with spin. But I will still have to laugh. Before I begin, Madam Speaker, let me congratulate the Prime Minister, the Minister of Finance, and the Minister of Planning for what was an excellent budget. In my recollection, not for many years has a budget been so well received by a wide cross-section of the population, and in my opinion, the vast majority of Trinidad and Tobago. Madam Speaker, in September 2015, we met the economy in a state of free fall. And listening to the opposition leader, it is obvious that the opposition leader is in denial and is now peddling a new narrative that has no basis in fact. We inherited an economy in Trinidad and Tobago in 2015 that was in virtual collapse. And it was basically on the brink of bankruptcy. It has been well articulated, but I'll just repeat. As the Honorable Minister of Finance had said, classically, we were running on fumes. There was 3 days supply of money to run the country. We maxed out the central bank overdraft. They don't like to hear it. The green fund was mortgaged. There was no fiscal consolidation, and that's an important point, because they were experiencing extremely high oil prices. So what they did is that they increased the expenditures, maximum of $63 billion, when oil prices were high. Okay? And then what they did, because they budgeted oil price at $65, it went to 100, you have to split half of the additional revenue with the Heritage and Stabilization Fund. That is the law. So they still spent all the revenue and went to borrow money to put in the Heritage and Stabilization. You're borrowing at a higher interest to save at a lower interest. If that is not economics a la who, I don't know what is. We inherited a bill of virtually $6 billion owed to contractors, some questionable bills, but we still inherited a bill. There was $5 billion in back pay, which was liquidated by the Minister of Finance within 2 years. So there's no issue that we were on the verge of bankruptcy and the economy was in virtual collapse. Hence the reason 2016 budget was titled Restoring Confidence and Building Trust, obviously. That's the first thing we had to do. Then we moved ahead in 2017, a blueprint for transformation and growth. 2018, changing the paradigm, putting the economy on a sustainable path. And now finally we have reached the turnaround, as was articulated by the Honorable Minister of Finance. Let me start my discourse with some facts, because we tend to forget the facts. We tend to forget from whence we came and from where we came. Today I go on record in this parliament as saying it is the PNM that has written the economic history of Trinidad and Tobago. It is the PNM that has built the energy sector over the decades, that has been instrumental in giving Trinidad and Tobago the standard of living that it has now grown accustomed to. It is the energy sector policy that has been the driver of this economy for decades. But let me highlight three areas. Starting in 1973, there was something called the Arab oil embargo. Everybody of this age group knows about it. Oil price increased sixfold within a couple months, from $6 to $30-something. We were lucky at the same time that production of the East Coast commenced in Pointe-a-Pierre and Saman. What we did, Dr. Eric Williams introduced something called the Petroleum Profit Tax Act in 1974. That is what brought the windfall to the country, you know. Not the oil and not the price, you know. It is the Petroleum Profit Tax Act. Because prior to that, oil companies were taxed as normal corporation tax. The Petroleum Profit Tax is a 55% tax on profit. That is PNM policy. The next oil shock came in 1980 with the Iraq-Iran war, when oil prices for the first time in history crossed $100 per barrel. $1980, you know, that is 38 years ago. In today's equivalent, it's probably over $200 per barrel. What did our PNM administration do? We implemented the Supplemental Petroleum Tax, SPT. Today, everybody talk about PPT and SPT, PPT and SPT. That's how it originated. PNM policy, again, is a windfall profit tax, where government takes part of the windfall, that the oil companies had no say in getting that windfall. We went ahead. And coming out of that oil era, we started to find more gas off the East Coast. At that point in time, gas was considered nuisance value to oil production. The royalty rate on gas then in those old E&P licenses were 1.5 TT cents per MCF. What did the PNM government do? We formed the NGC. The NGC first project was to take low-pressure gas off the East Coast, compress it, and pipe it ashore for power generation. Trinidad and Tobago, because of that, became one of the first countries in the world to generate 100% of its power from gas turbines and natural gas, which is the cleanest fuel outside of renewable energy. Then we developed what is called the Trinidad and Tobago gas model for development. We conceptualized Point Lisas. The NAR had said that is a twilight industry, you know. Okay? Well, thank God it is not twilight, because it would sustain the country today. And then more importantly, we took the decision under the 91 to 95 Manning administration to get into LNG. The highest revenue this country has ever earned was in 2008 because of Trinidad and Tobago going into the LNG business. And finally, to finish with the fiscal matters here, is this administration imposition of a 12.5 royalty on natural gas. That is estimated to bring in approximately $2.5 to $3 billion in fiscal 2019. What is the state of play when we assumed office? Gas production peaked at 4.3 BCF in 2010. The Honorable Leader of the Opposition liked to compartmentalize this country into who was in power and who wasn't in power. 2010 was the last year of the Manning administration. It peaked at 4.3 billion cubic feet per day. In 2011, it fell to 3.8. And by 2016, it was a mere 3.3 BCF per day. The NGC was not able to meet demand and was facing claims in excess of 4 billion. Downstream contracts were not renewed. Upstream supply contracts were not negotiated. Because of the above, there was limited investment in upstream. And finally, we had to deal with the state of Petrotrin. But before I say what we have done, let me just respond to some of the claims made by the leader of the opposition. The UNC likes to speak about this Juniper project, and fiscal incentives. I see County Central shaking your head.
No, just watching.
All right. Yes, the UNC provided fiscal incentive that led to the investment decision for Juniper. But through you, Madam Speaker, they threw the baby out with the bathwater. The candle costs more than the funeral. Because by that act, what you gave to the oil companies was as follows: 100% write-off on exploration expenditure in the year in which it was expended. You notice that? How much is done on exploration well? $100 million US. And a company could write off that in the very year without no amortization spread. Capital expenditure in the oil companies is divided into two areas: tangible and intangible. They gave accelerated capital write-off. Before that, it was 30-20-10 for tangibles and 20-20-10 continuing for intangibles. Under the UNC, the new incentive was 50% in the first year, 30% in the second year, and 20% in the third year. You are allowed to write off all the capital in a mere 3 years. What resulted there was a significant drop in tax revenue to the country. So it's all well and good a company drilling and producing gas, but if the state does not extract economic rent from it, especially from a depleting asset, it makes no sense. So you cannot look at one side of the equation, because at the end of the day, especially with oil and gas management, the state, who is the owner of the resource, because it's not renewable, so when it's done, has to extract fair economic rent. And when you throw the baby out with the bathwater, that is why we're in such a stringent fiscal position today in this country. And let me just debunk one final matter before I get into my core presentation. A fed up come to this house and hearing about E&V. Let me put the facts on the table for the records. An internal audit report into volume discrepancies in the amount of oil supplied from exploration and production to the refinery, which is called overage or shortage, dated August 17, was prepared by the Internal Audit Department. The report suggested that the discrepancies was attributable to A&V drilling. Kroll and Gaffney Klein, two international firms, were recruited to further investigate. They submitted their reports to Petrotrin board. Petrotrin board decided to terminate the IPSC contract with E&V. IPSC meaning Incremental Production Service Contract. That's the facts. The Petrotrin board, through its lawyers, forwarded the files to the office of the DPP. Government has nothing to do with that, The Petrotrin board, through its lawyers, forwarded the files to the DPP. Under the terms of the IPSC, this matter is now before arbitration. That is the story, Madam Speaker. No more, no less. So all this conspiracy theory about we shutting down Petrotrin to protect A&V. And I mean, you shut down a multi-billion-dollar operation that is hemorrhaging money for this. That is the long and short of the story. Those are the facts. The matter is before arbitration, and a file has been submitted to the Office of the DPP. We have absolutely no say as to where this thing is. So let me just put that to rest once and for all. So we met the energy sector in a very bad state. And when the energy sector is in a bad state, Madam Speaker, the national economy is in a bad state. What did we do? What did the Prime Minister do? This matter was so serious and had such far-reaching effect and impact on the national economy, it called for prime ministerial intervention. And I'll give you some strategic intervention that was made by the Prime Minister. First and foremost, he reconstituted the Standing Committee of Energy. Madam Speaker, energy policy is so significant to this country that the Manning administration of the time felt they should have another layer of oversight between the minister and the cabinet. Hence the reason for the Standing Committee of Energy. It was chaired by, it has been always chaired by the Prime Minister, includes the Minister of Energy and several other key ministers in the government. I just read in a cabinet minute here. Cabinet agreed to the reconstitution of the membership of the Standing Committee on Energy as indicated hereunder, November 11, 2010. The members are as follows. The Honorable Kamala Prasad, as Chairman. The Honorable Anand Ramlogan, Attorney General. Kevin Ramnarain, Delmon Baker, Winston Duka, Neville MacLeod, Vasan Barant, Larry Hawaii, Ganga Singh, Dr. Bhutiwari. For 5 years under UNC, Madam Speaker. This is the reconstitution, the 2012, but it was already there from 2010. Madam Speaker, the Standing Committee of Energy, probably the most important committee chaired by the Prime Minister outside of the National Security Council. We have had 20 standing committee meetings in our term of office up to now. Every single one was chaired by the Honorable Prime Minister, Dr. Rao. This committee under the UNC, listen to me carefully, held 17 meetings in the 5 years. And the Honorable Kamala Prasad, chairman of the committee, and then Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago, did not attend a single one.
Wow. No. And talking about energy today.
And comes here today, under her stewardship, the whole situation collapsed. It was the one eye leading the blind. If that is not a dereliction of duty, I don't know what is. That is the single most important standing committee of the cabinet, as I said, save and except the National Energy Council. That's how they govern.
It used to meet on Monday and Tuesday morning, yes.
Honorable members, one, members are sucking their teeth. That is unparliamentary. And I also remind members that there's a particular way in which you make an interruption in accordance with the standing orders. Okay, so let's remember where we are and try to abide by the standing orders. Minister.
Yes, Madam Speaker. I always knew that she hardly attended, but when I actually checked the records yesterday, not a single meeting.
Member,
we move on.
Minister, one minute. Member for Princess Town, it's very early in the day, all right? And therefore, let's try to control some of our dispositions to shout across the floor. I also want to thank all honorable members who would like to suggest to me what should be done and also ask them to be temperate in their expressions. Continue.
The energy sector was in crisis. First intervention by the Honorable Prime Minister. Standing committee. Second key intervention, Madam Speaker. We had no gas supply contract from the upstreamers. They were supposed to expire in 2018 and 2019. You don't go in 2018 January to renew a gas supply contract for 20 years in January for the gas supply contract to get effective in March. These things are negotiated years in advance. The Prime Minister had to step in personally. And that is the famous Houston meeting, where he went to Houston and discussed with the energy companies, in particular BP and EOG, and brokered a new gas supplies agreement. That came with a commitment of the upstream companies to invest $10 billion US in Trinidad and Tobago over the next 5 years. So gas supply, upstream investment secured. Standing committee operational. Then we go to the Dragon deal. Everybody have things to say about Dragon? But let me just, for the record, say something here today in this House. Madam Speaker, Venezuela, our next door neighbor, 7 miles away, swimming distance from Cedros, Point 14. You swim the distance already? Okay. 7 miles away from Cedros has the world's largest oil reserves, more than Saudi Arabia and Russia put together. Venezuela also had the 5th largest gas reserves in the world. And here the advantage we have been close to them. A significant part of those reserves, gas, occurs in eastern Venezuela, which is the underdeveloped part of Venezuela, not western Venezuela, Caracas, Lake Maracaibo, and that other area. Gas, unlike oil, you cannot store it. So you need an infrastructure to monetize the gas. Western Trinidad has probably one of the world's most advanced gas infrastructure. We have pipelines, we have petrochemical plants, we have LNG plants. So there was a symbiotic relationship with Venezuela monetizing their gas through the Trinidad infrastructure, and both parties could live happily ever after. The breaking point in this deal was agreeing to a pricing structure that both countries could live with. That was finally done, and the agreement was signed. Everybody saying some secret deal between Dr. Rowley and Maduro. There's no secret deal. When we went to sign the heads of agreement, it's an international border transaction. You must have a heads of agreement before the operating company sign. We took a plane load of people, you know. We chartered a ATR on the Tobago on. Half of the plane were press people, reporters and cameramen and what have you. What secrecy is that? We have disclosed every aspect of that deal. The quantum of gas, where the measuring point will be, where the fiscalization point will be, who will operate it, where the pipeline will run, what hibiscus will accept the gas on Trinidad side, ship it down to Point Lisas and to Point 40. The only aspect of the deal that has not been disclosed and cannot be disclosed is the commercial terms vis-a-vis the gas price. So I don't know where this conspiracy theory coming about, that there's some secret deal between President Maduro and Prime Minister Rowley. So I put that to bed. And finally, the revenue shortfall, which I spoke about based on the generous concessions the UNC give, the Prime Minister, myself and Minister Young in particular, went up to London and held discussion outlining to them the issues we face, and there was some agreement, and as we speak, we are in very sensitive negotiation to correct some of these matters. So let me just move to the gas outlook now. Minister Imbert gave quite a comprehensive discourse in his presentation. 2018, we expect average gas production to be 3.8 BCF, 2019, 3.94, 2020, 4.05, 2021, 4.14. and 2022, 4.09. I now come to gas reserves. Madam Speaker, this is the best news I'm going to announce to the country today that I have had since I became Minister of Energy. Trinidad and Tobago produces approximately 1.3 trillion cubic feet of gas per day. What it means is that if you do not find in new reserves 1.3 trillion cubic feet every year, you are going down a slide. It is called in the industry walking up a down escalator. Since 2004, Trinidad and Tobago has never replaced 100% of the reserves that it has produced. So every year we have had a decline in our reserve base. 2017 was the first year, year on year, that we have replaced 154% of the gas that we produced. 2004, and all that was driven by the gas sales agreement with the upstreamers that was brokered in Houston. Do not take this lightly. This has a signal, and it will continue to climb. Because there's deep water exploration going on now as we speak. Some of the information is still confidential, but all I would say is that there are 3 deep water wells that have been drilled by BHP. 2 have made gas discoveries. 1 more significant than the other. They are on a 4th well now. That well is called Concepcion. After BHP finishes drilling that well, probably in about 4 months' time, the rig will be going to the Gulf of Mexico to drill 3 wells there. BHP is so enthused that they plan to return immediately after that to come back to do follow-up drilling in the deep waters of Trinidad and Tobago. And that is the upside we have. Because if you do not keep finding new reserves, you are fast getting out of the business. And the challenge in the exploration and production side is to come to terms and continuously replenish the reserves in which you have produced. And we have been successful as a country. We in the oil business 100 years now. We in the gas business 30-something years now. And we have, by and large, been successful in replacing reserves. And that is a credit to every citizen of Trinidad and Tobago in that regard. So, I have dealt with deep water. I have dealt with revenue collection. But Madam Speaker, I have about 25 more minutes. And really and truly, I will abort my further discourse on gas and deal with one of the more topical issues in the country today, the state of Petrotrin, and what are the plans for Petrotrin. Madam Speaker, as a government, when we came into office, we realized that we had a serious systemic problem coming out of Petrotrin, operationally, financially, and debt-wise. One of the major challenges facing the government on assumption of office in 2015 was Petrotrin. The company which possesses the majority of the country's known oil reserves had continued to encounter serious operational and financial issues. Given this situation, one of the earliest decisions we took was to appoint a new board of directors, immediately after forming the government. That board of directors made a presentation to the cabinet. They outlined the difficulties the company faced. Cash flow challenges, deficient asset integrity, declining land and marine production, manpower surpluses. The financial forecast was not good. And no matter what business plan they were able to put in place, we were not seeing light at the end of the tunnel. And everything continued to pile up. The debt, the losses, the asset integrity continued to deteriorate, and all this thing came down on this administration as a perfect storm. We had to act. It would have been irresponsible of this administration not to act, and not to act decisively to save the economy of Trinidad and Tobago. And we used due process. We didn't get up a morning and the Prime Minister called me and say, Frankie, we're going to close down Petrotrin. We didn't do that. We went through a process. Coming out of the first presentation from the board of Petrotrin, we realized it was water more than flour, very early in the game. We appointed the Lashley Committee to look at Petrotrin and come up with some restructuring plans, etc., etc. The Lashley Committee had 2 members of the Oilfield Workers Trade Union. Okay? These are some of the assessment and recommendations. That Petrotrin was overburdened with debt. The net debt at financial year in 2015 amounted to 11.4 billion, is now as high as 13 billion. Government provided guarantees for short-term loans of 230 million to support its operation and to meet financial obligations. Taxes and royalty owed to government amounted to 3.2 billion at that time. It's now 3.5. 3.6. The Minister of Finance is more online than I am. And let me debunk something the member for Siparia said. That Petrotrin pay royalties and they pay tax. You know, it's like when you owe chin shop $200. And you say chin whole are $5. This we can just forget the rest of it. That is what happened. I think they made a small payment in 2016. Good? The debt is so big. It's like you're telling chin whole are $5 this fortnight. And I will come back to it.
And chin chase gambler.
The company was unprofitable. And the outlook was for a worsening of operation unless there's major capital injection and restructuring. The Lashley Committee submitted its report. And we realized at that point in time, step 2 was completed. Step 3, we realized also that we had to reconstitute our board. Because we needed a board with specific high-skilled people who was willing to serve the country. The new board was mandated to implement the restructuring and to make the company a profitable entity. That board has been working non-stop and continuously for the last almost 2 years. And I want to go on record as the line minister of Petrotrin to personally congratulate the members of the board of Petrotrin for very hard work. It is not finished, but I think they are doing an excellent job. They are balanced and they know what they are doing. The board engaged industry experts in the determination of the way forward for Petrotrin. There was consensus that the business model was obsolete, uncompetitive, and its operations inefficient. The company required capital injection of $25 billion just to survive and would continue to incur losses of $2 billion per year. It had a negative refinery margin. I'm fed up say this. You're importing 100,000 barrels of crude to lose $3 on every barrel you refine. What maths? The Honorable Minister, member for Siparia, talk about a standard Form 3 child. Could read that? Well, the Form 3 child could more than read this too. US. Good. Refinery utilization averaged a mere 60%. Fuel oil yield is still above 30%. And most importantly, Siparia mentioned about foreign exchange to buy fuel. It is a net user of foreign exchange. So, the board distilled all the reports. The Lashley report, Solomon report, McKinsey report, their own internal work, other reports the company had generated over the years. They've consulted far and wide. They made several presentations along the way, both to the Standard Committee of Energy and to the full cabinet. And finally, the decision was taken to go the way we have gone. And let me just debunk another rumor and fake news that is spreading through Trinidad and Tobago by certain people, that Petrotrin crude has no value, that it is heavy crude, it is sour crude. Madam Speaker, Petrotrin's crude, let me just back up here. Every crude in the world is traded to a benchmark price of a reference crude. So it is not no loose marketing arrangement. Every crude is traded against a reference crude. Petrotrin crude is traded against a crude called Vasconia crude out of Ecopetrol in Colombia. Madam Speaker, Vasconia crude recently has been trading as high as WTI less $3. On the average over the year, they forecast it will trade WTI minus $5 to $7. WTI is $75 today. So this thing about your car sell the crude and the crude have sulfur. There's a market for crude based on a configuration of a refinery. So this thing about you can't sell the crude, and the sale of 40,000 barrels of Vasconia-based crude will more than generate enough foreign exchange to import all the refined products and still have $200 million or more savings for the US. So we have remodeled Petrotrin. Okay? And after the decision was taken, the cabinet approved the way forward for Petrotrin through the presentation of the board. The board was asked to go back and communicate to the union that this is the decision and begin discussion as to how the logistics of the transition period will be worked out. The Prime Minister called a meeting with the Oilfield Workers Trade Union on August 21st, 2018. I was in the meeting, Minister of Finance and a couple other ministers. And I'm reading from the minutes of that meeting, minute 2.6.3. The Prime Minister informed the union that based on the decision, Petrotrin will be exiting the refining business and the Pointe-a-Pierre refinery will cease to operate. It couldn't be more clear than this. This was in a meeting with Roger and his, with Comrade Roger and his executive. So, what I want to do now is give some more detail on how the transition will work. Because again, there is a tendency here in Trinidad, and people have their rights, that, you know, again, let me use a cricket analogy. They want ball-by-ball commentary. But there's also something called a summary of the day's play. So sometimes a summary of the day's play might be more appropriate than ball-by-ball commentary. So, Madam Speaker, the company will be restructured along the following lines. Corporation Seoul is the owner of the company. We will be forming a holding company with 4 subsidiaries. We have already found a name for the holding company, Trinidad Petroleum Holding Limited, which will be the holding company. The 4 subsidiaries will be as follows. Subsidiary 1 will be Petrotrin, which is the old Petrotrin that will just be there to deal with legacy items. They will have no operations under Petrotrin. Subsidiary company number 2 will be what we call Newco 1, New Company 1. That will be the exploration and production company. That will be operationalized, and the assets of Petrotrin that are now on the exploration and production asset will be transferred to this company. Subsidiary 3, which we call Newco 2, will be the terminaling and marketing company. The terminaling facilities at Pointe-a-Pierre and the whole marketing operation will fall under that company. That company will be responsible for importing crude, importing refined products, selling it to the local market, and further on-selling it to the smaller markets of Canada. It is a viable business because what you have to understand now is that this value chain, traders make more money than refiners. In fact, sometimes, especially in gas, I can tell you that. The traders are the people who make the money. And you have to make all this investment upstream, midstream, and downstream. And then the traders come. It's come like the market vendors. The farmer's not making as much money as the vendors, And all he does is buy and sell. So that is how the business is unfolding. So trading and marketing, do not turn a blind eye on it. It is profitable business. And the 4th subsidiary will be what we call Newco 3, will be the company that the refinery assets will be placed in, and to use the Prime Minister's phrase, for opportunity attention. We are not going to, and let me refer to member for Siparia again. There's a difference between shutting down and decommissioning. There's no need for no CEC. We are just closing down the operation. We are de-inventorizing the asset, which is taking out all the sealable products, safe in the plant, largely with liquid nitrogen, so that it could be mothballed for possibly a short while. And when a new business model emerges based on conversations we will have with the market, then the refinery could be reoperationalized. It is as simple as that. And then the cash flow, that will be now generated, hopefully, by the E&P arm of the company and marketing, should be sufficient, based on the models we have run, to service the debts of Petrotrin, because it will not be held with this albatross around its neck called a refinery. And that's the business plan. I have some dates here, but I probably wouldn't have enough time to share all. The refinery wind down will be from the 15th to the 31st of October. The first import shipment of products will be on the 17th of October, 2018. The first crude export, and take this one, will be on the 27th of October, because we have to ship 500,000 barrels, so it takes about 10 to 12 days to accumulate that volume. And then there are other areas of the vesting and what have you. Throughout this transition, Madam Speaker, it is one area that is of serious concern, and we are paying particular attention to. And that is health, safety, and the environment. Because there's nothing more dangerous to derail this process than a HSNE disaster. We are very conscious of that. We have security on the plant and equipment, but more importantly, we are monitoring any issues of tampering or any operational shortcoming that could lead to a major environmental disaster or anything therefore. So this is an area that we are very, very focused on. We will spare nothing, including major expenditure, to make sure that asset integrity, health, safety, and the environment is very well protected. And finally, Madam Speaker, is reliability of supply. We have a very robust plan in place that will take care of that. Reliability of supply, we are working on 4...
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Your original 45 minutes are now spent. You're entitled to 10 more minutes. If you wish to you may.
There are 4 major areas of concern to the population, which I will address now in the next 10 minutes. It's the reliability, seamless continuation of supply of fuels to the local market, starting with petroleum products. As I indicated, when the refinery is finally, its operation has been terminated, there will be a 20-day supply of fuels for the local market. Our first shipment of imported products will be coming in on the 17th of October. That will supplement. And then as we phase out the local supply, there will be a continuous flow of imported products. So hopefully, and I feel quite confidently in saying this, that there will be a seamless transition from refinery-based products to imported products. Because at the level, at the stage of the pump, nobody knows whether the gas you put in your car comes from the Petroleum refinery or from a refinery somewhere on the Gulf Coast of the United States. You know, the diesel will even be better.
Much better.
Okay. So that is it. LPG again is a concern. Few people. Let me just put the facts clear. The local market for LPG requires 2,500 barrels per day. With the closure of Petrotrin, local supplies will come from Phoenix Park Gas Processors Limited and Atlantic LNG. There will be no importation of LPG. The Minister of, the member for Siparia said that today they have to import CNG. And we are getting the foreign exchange from.
So wrong.
At present, local production of LPG, our local demand is 2,500 barrels. Local production is 14,700 barrels. 8,100 barrels from PPGPL and 6,600 barrels from Atlantic. All systems are in place for Petrotrin to hand over that responsibility to PPGPL. I spoke to Mr. Chantak up to this morning, and everything looks like it will be a smooth transition, and there will be no gaps in the LPG market. And let me go on record to repeat what the Minister of Finance said. The price of LPG will remain the same, heavily subsidized by the state.
Subsidy will remain.
Yes, subsidy will remain.
What is the subsidy? Tell the consumer. Tell the people what is it.
And finally, bitumen. Bitumen is a product that is used in road construction and paving and what have you. As we speak, bitumen is produced as a product from the low-end part of the barrel at Petrotrin Refinery. It is marketed by Lake Asphalt. Lake Asphalt doesn't have the facility. They just do the invoice, give it to the contractor, and he goes and he fills up his bitumen at Pointe-a-Pierre. With the cessation of refining operations at Pointe-a-Pierre, the country will have to import bitumen. We are putting things in place so that that importation will be done in the first instance largely by Lake Asphalt, Trinidad and Tobago Limited. However, consideration will also be given to opening up the market so that contractors can import their bitumen at their own risk and at their own cost if they so desire. So it will be a fairly liberalized market for bitumen. There's some small use for sulfuric acid because WASA uses sulfuric acid to make alum, which is aluminum sulfate, and Yara will be the importers of the sulfuric acid. They always supplement the sulfuric acid supply now as we speak. So again, we see no major hitches in that area. So, Madam Speaker, I have attempted here today. I was expecting some pace bowling, but I had to bat spin. So, but
Slow spin, slow spin, slow spin.
but I did bat. Okay. I have outlined very clearly where the energy sector was when we came into office. We have outlined, largely by initiatives driven by the Prime Minister, how we have balanced this gas supply situation. That was no easy task. That called for high-level, complex negotiations. Because when you're in London meeting the president of BP and Shell, those guys know what they're about, you know. They have an infrastructure that supports them, you know. As a matter of fact, I should say so to the Parliament. Today, we have a negotiating team that is currently speaking with them. And it is the best prepared negotiation team ever in the history of Trinidad and Tobago. Because we have brought on board expert advice, Pointe-a-Pierre and partners, the same people who prepared the gas master plan are now consultants in these negotiations. White and Case, one of the top energy lawyers coming out of New York, are also advisors. So when we sit around the table, for the first time, we sit as equals. You know.
They respect us.
And I am very optimistic that some of these negotiations will be concluded in an amicable way, where both sides will feel happy, both the oil companies and the government and people of Trinidad and Tobago. So in closing, Madam Speaker, I think I've outlined the issues in the gas sector. I've outlined the issues that face Petrotrin. There are other issues with oil that we will be dealing with later on. And episode number 2 of this discourse, if you want to hear it, you can come up to the Senate in 2 weeks' time. Okay? And finally, let me just go on record as saying I want to personally thank and congratulate the Prime Minister for his leadership role in the energy.
Oh, yes, oh, yes.
Member for Pointe-a-Pierre.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for allowing me to join this debate on this budget statement of 2019 presented on October the 1st by the member, Minister of Finance member, Diego Martin, Northeast. Let me first start off by saying that I now understand why the Minister of Energy never was returned as the chairman of the People's National Bank. No substance. He came here this afternoon, and we expected for him first to tell us about Petrotrin and the employees that are being laid off today, and give them some sort of comfort that they will be taken care of by this, I wouldn't use the word unparliamentary word, by this government. He talked about opening the button, but the amount of bouncers he got today from the leader of the opposition, he could not even understand. And he talked about 2 bites of the cherry. Well, I really hope they don't put him back in the Senate to talk the next time around, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, first let me start off by congratulating the member of Parliament for Cherrie-Ann, the opposition leader, my leader, for visionary contribution today. She showed true leadership. She took apart the budget statement by the Diego Martin, the member of Diego Martin Northeast, in a clinical way. Yes. And they opened the button, as the Minister of Energy said, with himself. But when I used to go to school, we used to have fellows like the Minister of Energy that always had the equipment, the bat and the ball. But you always allow him to bat last because he could never bat, and always bowl last. So really and truly, I don't understand what this minister was saying throughout his contribution. It's very lackluster. He talked about 154% reserve replacement in 2017. Madam Speaker, I want to to let this population know that they did not do that. It is the Savannah and the macadamia that we, under the PP government that we had put in place, that saw the fruition in 2060. He talked about they brought back reserves. It's a total untruth. And let us be real. Madam Speaker, this Minister of Energy, when you listen to him, and I listened to him over the last few weeks, especially, when the whole issue of Petrotrin started up about closure. And he gives the impression to the population that he has all this wealth of information and knowledge of energy. He worked in Petrotrin. And he feels for the employees. But you would have thought that given his knowledge and experience in the energy sector, he would have asked the Prime Minister to allow him to run Petrotrin to save the jobs and lives and the crown jewel of this country and put his knowledge, what he's doing, you know what he's doing? Destroying Petrotrin, Madam Speaker. He's using his knowledge to destroy Petrotrin. So really and truly, I don't understand when he gives this to the population, Madam Speaker, that he cares about Petrotrin, he cares about the employees, that he would not have used the Minister of Energy, would have used his experience to try and save our crown jewel. It is like Carney that they shut down, Madam Speaker, this wicked PNM government. And Petrotrin is another one like that. Madam Speaker, they love to open companies, you know. This government loves to open companies. They opened a company called Upstream Downstream Liability or Limited to put the assets of NGC in it and to hive off certain assets from the energy sector and put it inside. Up to today in this budget statement, we heard nothing about that company. And yet again today, he's coming to talk about this Petrotrin holding company of having 4 subsidiaries. And it's just to fool the population. It's a fool the population. And he talked about this new company will be selling CARICOM fuel. But just last week, Madam Speaker, the CARICOM countries are already looking outside internationally for the supply of gas that they used to get from Petrotrin. So I don't know who he's going to sell us this fuel to. Madam Speaker, this Minister of Energy, the Minister of Energy is delusional, you know. Really, really delusional. And, you know, I used to admire him, he used to smile a lot. But I know of lately he doesn't smile anymore. I don't know why. I think he's really, I genuinely feel he is not in agreement in shutting down Petrotrin, Madam Speaker, but he is going with status quo. Because I sat on the Energy Committee with the Minister of Energy, along with the Minister of Finance, and for the last 3 years, and nowhere in that committee did they give the committee any inclination about shutting down Petrotrin. So, Madam Speaker, the Minister of Energy really, I would have thought he would have come and give us something of substance, even within his energy ministry. He would have talked about, even in the extractive industry, he would have been doing something for it, trying to at least beef up the employees in his ministry so that the government and the country could really get the kind of benefits that is due to them. Madam Speaker, I want to turn a bit about Petrotrin, because Petrotrin is really what we are here about today, in my view. I'm the Member of Parliament of Pointe-a-Pierre. The Petrotrin refinery and the head office resides in Pointe-a-Pierre. There are a lot of my constituency members work at Pointe-a-Pierre refinery within the compounds of Petrotrin. There are a lot of fence-line communities that are impacted by the closure, or as they would say, the restructuring of Petrotrin. And the impact, it is really going to be felt through the length and breadth of Petrotrin, of Pointe-a-Pierre, sorry, Madam Speaker. You have the member for Tabaquite, also another fence line community of Gasparillo. You have even my colleague on the other side, the member for San Fernando West. His constituency will be affected. San Fernando East, his constituency will be affected. And you know, I wouldn't call any names, but today was at lunch, and a colleague said, you know, you all might be very happy that we shut down Petrotrin. And I said, you know, why? Why would you want to, how could I be happy about that? Because my constituents are crying every day. They come into my office and they are hopeless. And I would have thought that this Minister of Energy, the Minister of Energy, would have come here to talk about some relief for these people or even the fence line communities. So let me get into my presentation about Petrotrin as part of my debate, Madam Speaker. You see, Madam Speaker, for the past 3 years since taking office, we have seen members of this government, led by the Honorable Prime Minister, the member for Diego Martin West, seek to belittle and make the most damning statements about the performance of Petrotrin, Madam Speaker. In the past 3 years, not only has this government turned its back on the crown jewel that I call Petrotrin, which is a part of the Pointe-a-Pierre, and that has led significant development within our own country over a number of years, Madam Speaker. Our country must never forget that when the opposition leader, who is now the Prime Minister, Dr. Keith Christopher Rowley, needed support to come into high office, you know what he did? He promised the best to the workers of Petrotrin, Madam Speaker. As a matter of fact, he signed an MOU with the OWTU on August 28, 2015, which was supposed to ensure, you know what, Madam Speaker? Mutual respect, genuine consultation, political will, and collaboration to ensure a better tomorrow for all of us. Did that happen, Madam Speaker? I would say no, because the proof in the pudding is here today, where we have seen the opposition leader read out a termination letter sent out by an executive director, Ronald Ajoda Singh. Distribution of letters of termination. So, Madam Speaker, this government is very disingenuous about how they treat with the whole issue of Petrotrin. I want to go to the Minister of Finance presentation, page 4. Second paragraph. And I quote, when this PNM administration, under the leadership of our Prime Minister, Dr. the Honorable Keith Rowley, assumed office in September of 2015, just 3 years ago. Let me quote. We promised the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago a transparent, honest, and accountable government. We're not getting that. The people are suffering. I want to ask them about Petrotrin. Are they transparent, honest, and accountable about Petrotrin? And the answer is no. I want to ask them about just even the sea bridge and the vessels that they procured. Are they honest, transparent, and accountable to the people of this country? And the answer is no. I want to ask them about WGTL and the sale to Nikon just recently, of it being transparent. The Minister of Energy talked about the Dragon gas. He talked about, in his presentation, they took a plane load full of citizens of Trinidad and Tobago, half full with media. But the reports came back that the media was never even allowed to witness certain things in that. So it was just a PR stunt by this government. So where is the transparent, honest, and accountable government that the Minister of Finance, in his second paragraph, talked about? None. And I would have thought that the Minister of Energy would have come today to at least clarify some transparency, some honesty, and accountability to the people of the citizenry who are looking on about Petrotrin and the whole issue of energy. He has done nothing. Far from that, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I want to go through a little bit has been said before about Petrotrin's history of debt. And you see, this government does not like to take responsibility. They seem to feel that, as a colleague of mine says, that the PNM only came into power on September 2015. They only existed since September 2015. They like to tell the population that before September 2015, it was either old PNM, PP government, but not this PNM. So they move, they're like a moving target, Madam Speaker. But this country must never forget about the same issue that they're using to shut down Petrotrin, about this $13 billion debt, because it moves every day. One was 11, 12, 13. So let's put it this way. It's over $10 billion debt. And they're not telling this country how this debt came about. This debt came about because of them, Madam Speaker. One, Malcolm Jones, and the decisions taken by the PNM government during that tenure. And they had senior members who sit right there opposite, who were part of that cabinet at that time. You had Diego Martin West, you had Diego Martin Northeast. Well, I would not call her Ruka Maloney because I couldn't verify that. I heard a member call her today. I would not call her name. She was there. The member, sorry, Madam Speaker. And I am sure the Minister of Energy would have been somewhere there, somewhere around, based on his experience in energy. The Minister of Energy, the present Minister of Energy. So you would have thought that even at that point in time, OWTU, and the records are there, were against some of those projects that Malcolm Jones was doing at Petrotrin because they felt it would burden the country, and they were correct today. But the Minister of Energy comes here and they like to say, well, yesterday was yesterday and today is today. Madam Speaker, this citizenry will not allow them to get away with that. The numbers are there of the waste, mismanagement, and corruption under the Malcolm Jones-led era management. And you know what? You know what is ironic? When the present Prime Minister, Member of Parliament for Diego Martin West, came into power in September 2015, the first person he appointed on the Energy Committee is Malcolm Jones. The same Malcolm Jones that has caused this country to be in the position that it is today, and our energy security is literally vanishing as we speak, Madam Speaker. And under the PP government, we had challenged Malcolm Jones. We had taken him to court. And you know what? The first thing that the Prime Minister with the present Attorney General did? You know what they did? They exonerated Malcolm Jones and took the issue out of court, Madam Speaker. No. No. It's too early in the debate into the give way, Madam Speaker. It's too early.
You are misrepresenting and you know that.
What did the...
Member for San Fernando West. Member for... please, the crosstalk. It's a debate. Everybody will have an opportunity to join the debate and make whatever comments they wish. Member for Pointe-a-Pierre.
Madam Speaker, if the Attorney General tell me he's disappointed in me, that means I'm doing real good here today. All right, I'm doing real good. Madam Speaker, I want to tell you what the PP government did while we were in control of Petrotrin. We had a plan. We had a strat plan, 2014 to 2018. We had competent management, Madam Speaker. We had qualified, competent staff, right? We were really about turning around and saving the jobs of the people of Petrotrin. And we had a plan. And you know what? when this government came into power in September 2015, they had a new board that they installed in Petrotrin. The chairman at that point in time was Andrew Jupiter. He resigned. Professor Andrew Jupiter. He resigned for whatever reasons, and I got the impression that being on a board was too onerous for him. But you know the irony of Professor Andrew Jupiter? He still remains on the board of NGC, Madam Speaker. So he resigned from the Petrotrin as chairman, but he still kept his directorship on NGC. Something is not right there, Madam Speaker. Right? So when
Member for Ropuch East and member for Couva South, I have, been exercising a lot of leniency, but you all have engaged in excessive crosstalk and almost running commentaries. I assure you, both of you all would have your 55 minutes if you wish.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I want to get back to Professor Andrew Jupiter, who was chairman of the first board under this present government, Madam Speaker, in September or thereabouts of 2015. Andrew Jupiter, and I've always felt, Madam Speaker, where I sat and I still sit on the Ministry of Energy, I always felt that this government was painting a narrative since back then in September 2015 to shut down Petrotrin. And it has come to pass that I'm not a seerman or any prophetess or prophet, but it has come to pass that I am not too far off the mark. Because when you look at Andrew Jupiter's history while he was at Petrotrin, he created and he crafted a narrative and put things in place for the entire shutdown of Petrotrin. And I call it, the first thing he did, they got rid of all the competent staff that came in underneath us, Madam Speaker. These were international people that had no affiliation with the PP government. They were hired based on competency. They were hired based on whatever international experience they had, and they brought it to the table for the good of the country, Madam Speaker. The first thing Andrew Jupiter did was to get rid of them, Madam Speaker. The other thing that Andrew Jupiter did was start to drop the production in the same E&P area that this government is banking on. He started to curtail the production in Trinma and other aspects of Petrotrin, Madam Speaker. They were painting a narrative all along. Because one of the individuals that was hired under the PP government, I can't remember his name, he was for lack of a better, finance director. When we were in government, the PP were in control of Petrotrin, that individual, based on his international reputation, Madam Speaker, was able to secure a loan of, I think, over $500 million US, based on the reputation at that point in time that the lending agency had, based on the management that they had in place, and what was trying to be achieved. They were going to lend them that money based on that reputation and criteria without any government guarantee, Madam Speaker. You know what Andrew Jupiter did? They declined the loan. And that loan at that point in time could have gone to even assist and help with the development of Petrotrin and turning it around. So, Madam Speaker, you really have to look at the narrative that this government was painting with Petrotrin back then. Madam Speaker, there was another area that, under the PP government, they talked about trying to increase the production locally of oil for the Petrotrin refinery. And there were several things that the PP government had in place with the board of Petrotrin at that point in time and the management of Petrotrin. And if Andrew Jupiter and his team had followed through, Petrotrin would not be in the position that it is today. Because those same strategies, Madam Speaker, that the PP government was going to do and had in place before they admitted office, what this government did and the board of Petrotrin did was they temporarily shut down those strategies for the last 3 years. And some of those same strategies are what they are coming here to do in the ENP. It is just like the Cuba Hospital. They changed the name from the Cherrie-Ann Hospital, and they're waiting for a while, and then they will open it for the betterment of the citizen. Open the Cuba Hospital now. So, Madam Speaker, it is clear to me that there was a narrative being painted about Petrotrin. And I don't know if it was to break the OWTU. I ask, Madam Speaker, Trinidad and Tobago, we need Petrotrin. We need Petrotrin. Petrotrin has been good to us. And I would have hoped and thought that this government would have put aside and really do what is necessary to try and save a corporation that has been good for the citizenry of Trinidad and Tobago. Every one of us in this country. And, you know, the minister talked about chin. Well, I am a chin because I'm an Asian. And he talked about some sort of thing about when you go in a chin shop, you get them a little thing and a little, you know, you know, because my grandfather had a grocery, Madam Speaker, and they used to come and trust. And they used to write it on a brown piece of paper. Every Friday they come and they pay off the bill and they take more. But the evidence is there that under the PP government, if you read the Extractive Industries report, it was there that under the PP government, Petrotrin contributed millions of dollars, billions. But the Minister of Energy and his government is trying to paint a narrative again that Petrotrin is just a bad corporate citizen. It's just a bad corporate citizen. So, Madam Speaker, what happened? Andrew Jupiter, he did his narrative, and then they said to Andrew Jupiter, well, take a side, relax, resign, and because we have a new chairman to bring in. Because if Andrew Jupiter was fed up with sitting on boards under this government, he would have resigned from all boards. So he resigned from Petrotrin, and what happened? They brought in a new chairman, one Wilfred Espinay. Now, from the time I saw Mr. Espinay coming in as chairman of Petrotrin, I said, this is the final nail in the coffin for Petrotrin. Yeah. And because of his track record as a businessman in another company that at one point in time used to be a state company called Trinidad Cement Limited, and his track record there. So, Madam Speaker, it was clear to me, sitting on the Energy Committee, that this is what they were going to do. Because because it was frightening. Because when you listen to Mr. Espinay now, and when he first started the narrative about Petrotrin and his 1,700 workers, and then it jumped to 3,500, and then the Prime Minister in his speech said something like 4,000, then it jumped to 5,200, and then at one press conference, Mr. Espinay said, all going home. Don't ask me again, all going home. So clearly, Madam Speaker, they keep changing the narrative about Petrotrin because they had no plan about Petrotrin. They were just about shutting it down and getting rid of the union. Because when Mr. Espinay first started to talk about the closure of Petrotrin, he said the refinery is closing down. Closing down. Closure means close for me. But when you listen as the time went on, Madam Speaker, you see another change in the narrative. Today you hear the Minister of Energy saying that they're not decommissioning the refinery. Am I correct that you said so? They're not decommissioning the refinery. They're mothballing the refinery. Now, what is the meaning of, I'm not an energy expert, so you're not decommissioning the refinery now, you're mothballing the refinery, and there are issues between when the mud start to come off of the refinery. During that period of time, there are environmental issues, Madam Speaker. Because the narrative that they have also painted about the refinery and Petrotrin is asset integrity. I have a document, Madam Speaker, that the biggest set of funding and capital expenditure required in the asset integrity for Petrotrin is in the E&P area, the same area that they are banking to be profitable for this country. The same E&P area, you know. It is the asset integrity, there are issues within the refinery, I grant you that, Madam Speaker. But the bulk of the funding that is required to correct asset integrity is in the E&P area. The same area that they're talking about, that they're giving, right? The same area. So, as I said, the narrative keeps changing, Madam Speaker, because Espinay said, shutting down, closure. We asked him, when I had done a release, he said, Minister, when I had done a release, before when I understand they were closing down and sending home people, they say the MP for Pointe-a-Pierre don't know what he's talking about. That's true. And 5 days later, they shut down the whole thing. They talk about it.
That's true.
But
That's true.
So the MP for Pointe-a-Pierre don't get any information from people inside of Petrotrin. I want to tell him I have so much information about Petrotrin.
More than the minister.
Right? So much information. Madam Speaker, I'm glad that the Minister of Energy has stayed back to listen to my contribution. I really want to. I want to ask the Minister of Energy. Who recommended the closure of Petrotrin? Who really recommended the closure of Petrotrin? Because we had asked, I think I asked the Prime Minister a couple of weeks ago or 2 weeks ago, before the end of the last sitting, in questions time, Prime Minister's time. Show us or tell this country what report that the cabinet, his cabinet, the Minister of Energy, Wilfred Espinay, read, that talked about the shutdown and the closure of Petrotrin for the good of this country. And I will tell you, there is none, Madam Speaker, none. The Lashley report that they banked on when they came in prior to Wilfred Espinay coming in as chairman in September, the Lashley committee was formed, I think was in January 2017, if my memory serves me correct. And based on that report, which was the life and the importance of Petrotrin, it did not discuss the closure of Petrotrin. It discussed hiving off Petrotrin into 3 units. 3 units. Trinma, refinery and marketing, and E&P. E&P was considered land, Trinma was considered maritime. And when they met with the union, Madam Speaker, the union added, which they agreed, to look at a 4th unit, which was their hospital area for the benefit of the workers, Madam Speaker. So, Madam Speaker, in the last report, which was being debated in front of the Energy Committee, and we never completed it, because we never met after that, since February 2018, Madam Speaker, it clearly showed nothing there about the last report of closing down Petrotrin. As a matter of fact, in one of those committees, one of the directors, who is the finance man.
Has that committee reported?
I'm not talking about the report, Madam Speaker.
No, the committee. You're talking about the committee. Because I heard you say the committee never finished its investigation. Yeah. All right? So that I'm not going to allow you to give any information about that. Okay?
Madam Speaker, one of those meetings was out in the public, and it is there for the public to view. So I'm assuming that it was not done in camera. So whatever came out in that meeting, because I see it on YouTube, I view it on YouTube, and I'm just reporting what I saw on YouTube, Madam Speaker. But I take your point, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, there's something called the Solomon Report. The Solomon Report, which they have been doing work for Petrotrin, not only under this government, under previous regimes, Madam Speaker. The McKinsey report also, they never talked about shutting down Petrotrin. They talked about restructuring Petrotrin. They never talked about shutting down the refinery and sending them all the workers. They might have talked about restructuring, and maybe there might have been some severance but maybe a restructuring of the employees. And I'm assuming, based on the MOU that they would have signed back in September or August 2015 when they came into power with OWTU, that they would have sat down with the recognized union and try and work out issues for the betterment of Petrotrin that they are trying to do now, that the OWTU said that let us sit and discuss. Madam Speaker, since this refinery and this talk about the closure of Petrotrin has come into the domain, we have so many different individuals that have come out there and talk about whether for and against. And I used to work with a gentleman, Dr. Terence Farrell. I respect him. I think he's fine economist, fine mind. I worked with him in Central Bank. And Terence Farrell, Dr. Terence Farrell, when this government first came into power, he was the chair of the Economic Advisory Board. And you would have thought that when he sat as the chair of that committee, and the mandate of that committee was if my memory serves me right, was to go into state companies that this government said they did not know much about, that they were scared about the situation, because I hear the Minister of Energy said that the country was running on fumes when they came into power. And Dr. Terence Farrell's mandate was to go into companies like Petrotrin, who would have had great issues, and tell the Prime Minister, or report to the Cabinet, report to the Prime Minister of Petrotrin. Sure about that. But you know what Dr. Terence Farrell says recently when they talked about closing the Petrotrin? And I want to quote him. One such instance, he referred that to the closure of Petrotrin as a tragedy. A tragedy, Madam Speaker. The same that I have utmost respect for Dr. Terence Farrell. And I am sure Dr. Terence Farrell and his team would have gone into Petrotrin in September, would have spent time in Petrotrin to get an understanding of the issues of Petrotrin. But he never, so today he's saying it is a tragedy. It is a tragedy. So what does Dr. Terence Farrell know about Petrotrin that this government doesn't know? And I respect Dr. Farrell. So maybe that is why Dr. Farrell no longer sits as the chair of the Economic Advisory Board, Madam Speaker. One, Suniti Maharaj. Suniti Maharaj is not a PP favorite person. She's I think, an independent writer. And she is asking in one of her articles on the Express on Thursday, 13, 2018, the closure of Petrotrin should not be a cabinet decision or a board decision. It should be consulted. The people and the citizenry of Trinidad and Tobago should have a say. And she's also recommended that should have been brought to Parliament to really debate and flesh it out. Now, Madam Speaker, if Petrotrin is so onerous on the country, why this government did not come to Parliament before the last session ended and be honest based on the on the Minister of Finance, second paragraph, and be honest and transparent and accountable to the citizenry, and come here in Parliament and tell us what is the true picture about Petrotrin. They cannot do that. And the citizenry, they are asking for it. Everyone is asking about it. If you read every article about the closure of Petrotrin, there's a unknown, a question mark, and they're asking why this government cannot do the right thing and come to this Parliament and really let us debate Petrotrin. So, Madam Speaker, I want to go to energy security, Madam Speaker. Our energy security is now threatened. I don't care. You know, I listened to the Minister of Energy last week, and I asked him a question. If fuel prices will increase, he said, well, I can't say that. I asked the Minister of Finance. And in the budget, fuel price went up. And in his statement, one of the questions I asked him, he says, trust him. I remember the member for Opush, he says, trust him. Right? Now, let me go to energy security, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, we are citizens of this country. We have always had that luxury, that comfort of knowing that we can go to our gas stations and fill up on gas. We can have LPG. We had that comfort. We had that comfort. We had that for years, Madam Speaker. Years. This government has destroyed that overnight. They have destroyed our energy security overnight. And that is something that we must not take lightly of, because we are no better off, based on what they are doing with Petrotrin, we are no better off than any other island and CARICOM, our neighboring CARICOM countries, Madam Speaker. We used to be a supplier. We used to give them that comfort that they can get their energy security from us, Trinidad and Tobago. That is no longer so, because we cannot trust them. We cannot trust them in when they say that we will have a 20-day supply of fuel. Madam Speaker, there are so many. I mean, for 2 years we can't get the sea bridge correct. How we can get the supply of fuel for our vehicles, our airplanes, you know, even the galleon passage? How can we get that right if they couldn't get the sea bridge right in 2 years and they still haven't sailed the galleon passage? So if they can't get something as simple as the galleon passage and the sea bridge correct, Madam Speaker, how they could get the fuel, the energy security of this country correct? It's impossible by them being in charge. Madam Speaker, even purchasing the fuels from international, that is an entire business by itself. It requires certain competencies as employees, because we didn't used to do it at Petrotrin. I heard the Minister of Energy talked about our crude, the type of crude, and he's saying, well, people are saying that the crude is a high sulfur content, and it really don't attract any good prices out there, and he quoted something $3 less WTI, right? Madam Speaker, I would have thought that the Minister of Energy would have come here today and tell this country, based on accountability, transparency, and honesty, where we selling our fuel, where we buying our fuel, what price we paying out there. Give this country some comfort. Give this country some comfort.
5 minutes are now spent. You're entitled to 10 more minutes to complete.
So I would have thought, Madam Speaker, that the Minister of Energy, I don't know if he was batting or running up, and I think he might have been trying to bowl here today, Madam Speaker. I mean, he is bowling underhand whole evening, Madam Speaker. Right? And Madam Speaker, I would have thought that the Minister of Energy would have come and talk and give some comfort to our fence line business people. Our fence line business community, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, Marabella, certain parts of San Fernando, Gasparillo, they are businesses that have employees. that are in jeopardy of closure based on this decision by this government, Madam Speaker. I would have thought that he would have come and give some sort of comfort. They talk about elaborate dry dock, but that is pie in the sky, according to my leader. It is not going to happen now. They talk about that the San Fernando waterfront would absorb some of those. I mean, you are taking a technician from Petrotrin, right? And sending him down on his San Fernando waterfront and say, go on, do what? I don't know. Dig some sand. I mean, that is insult to the people of Trinidad and Tobago. That is why their parents would have sent their children to school to educate them, to be able to work in a refinery, to be engineers, to be technicians. And that is what you want to tell them? Go down to the San Fernando waterfront and go and dig some sand, go and lay some decking or something. Madam Speaker, that is an insult and arrogance. Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, you know, so there's much more I could talk about Petrotrin. I thought I needed 3 hours like my leader. But given I only have a few more minutes, Madam Speaker, I want to talk about some failed energy promises by this PNM government, Madam Speaker. It's failed energy promises. Madam Speaker, when you look at the FDIs within the energy sector, Madam Speaker, it literally is zero under their tenureship. They did nothing for the last 3 years and counting, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, today as it stands, not a single deep water bid wrong has been held under their administration. And they promised that. They promised that to the people. Madam Speaker, they promised that to the people. They talked about, the Minister of Energy talked about our fiscal incentives that we give, and he's given it like, he talked like we give it away. Well, Madam Speaker, there are 20 pages in this budget manifesto that refers to energy. Madam Speaker. And the same fiscal incentives that the PP government put in place, that this country is enjoying, and they are enjoying and trying to take credit for, is under the PP government, and it is there in their budget statement, Madam Speaker. It is there in their budget statement. It is there in their budget statement. I want to just read it, page 76. Juniper, now fully operationalized, PP government incentive. Angeline, PP government, Madam Speaker. Truck, PP government. Right? The high, even starfish is PP government, Madam Speaker. So they're everything, and they talk about the uptake in gas production. The uptake in gas production is because of the incentives and what the PP government put in place. It is not them. It is not them. Madam Speaker, there are 20 pages inside here related to energy. And the Minister of Energy referred to none. 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 He talked about fake oil and AV drilling, Madam Speaker. But this is the same Minister of Energy that was in another place, boasting about the production level by that same company, Madam Speaker. By that same company. Right? So, Madam Speaker, I know I only have a few more minutes, and my other colleagues would think, but I want to talk about some, in my constituency, some issues, Madam Speaker. I want to give thanks to my constituents who have been supporting me over the last 3 years, and I thank them for supporting me. But there are some issues within my constituency, Madam Speaker. An early childhood care center, that it is close to completion, like 5% outstanding. And the Minister of Education would not open that early childhood care center in Marabella. And it's for the people of, it's for the people and the citizenry of the country. They talk the Harmony Hall Presbyterian School has been abandoned.
Order.
Mount Pleasant Government Primary School that could not open in September, Madam Speaker, because of a sewer system issue that this same Minister of Energy said that he would rectify. The Claxon Bay Junior Anglican School, the Macaulay Government Primary School, healthcare centers, Madam Speaker, that they talked about opening 24/7. Let me enjoy some of that in Pointe-a-Pierre. Madam Speaker, roads and infrastructure, crime, Madam Speaker. Crime has been rampant since this government took over, Madam Speaker, especially in the Claxon Bay area, Madam Speaker. And now the closure of Petrotrin will hit Pointe-a-Pierre hard. I want to tell them, if they're trying to suffer me, David Lee, they're really suffering the people of Pointe-a-Pierre, and I will not allow them to do that. Just as how I walked with OWTU on the first day of March from Pointe-a-Pierre to Hoover South with MP Indar Singh, we will support and continue to support the workers of Petrotrin, and we will not allow this government to shut down Petrotrin like that, Madam Speaker. So, Madam Speaker, in those few words, I thank you.
Member for Lopino Borneo West.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I thank you for the opportunity to contribute to this budget debate, and I seek your leave under 4410, please. Standing Order 4410. Madam Speaker, there are three well-established criteria by which the record of performance of organizations and institutions, including governments worldwide, is scrupulously and objectively evaluated. I refer to the heights achieved in discharging 1, their legal responsibilities, 2, their financial responsibilities, and 3, and by no means least, their social responsibilities. Madam Speaker, as I rise to make my contribution to the national budget for 2018-2019, I do so with a great deal of satisfaction and deep conviction that, given the disastrous financial state of affairs which the PNM government inherited following our success at the polls in 2015, the record of performance of this administration can only be described as phenomenal. If our citizens genuinely reflect upon the three evaluation criteria to which I have alluded, this is what they will find. In the discharge of our legal responsibilities, no one can truthfully deny the enviable track record achieved in working towards the completion of the more than 100 items on our legislative agenda, projected for the period 2016 to 2020. But I leave that record of achievement to be dealt with by my colleague, the Honorable Attorney General. Madam Speaker, insofar as this government's discharge of its financial responsibilities to the people of Trinidad and Tobago are concerned, there is absolutely no doubt in respect of the clinically structured and intellectually charted roadmap along which our Minister of Finance has led us caringly and confidently over the past 3 years, designed as it was to extricate the nation as painlessly as possible from the calamitous state of affairs which confronted this administration in September 2015, and now having guided us along a path to recovery, a stabilized economy, and the achievement of positive growth. And now, Madam Speaker, what a budget presentation on Monday. What thoughtfulness. What immeasurable wisdom. Yes. What a demonstration of caring and putting people first. A turnaround budget so patriotically, patently, and professionally crafted in PNM tradition, in PNM style, and above all, in PNM's unrelenting quest for a much improved quality of life for all. And so, Minister of Finance, I congratulate you on your presentation of such an amazingly appropriate budget, filled as it is with a wide range of cogent, comforting, and caring measures, all aimed at the good and welfare of all citizens of Trinidad and Tobago. Madam Speaker,
While I understand everybody being eager to support their respective sides, even support in terms of clapping, jeering, and any such behavior could be considered disorderly. Please continue, member.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, the ability to look after the needs of the vulnerable members of our society is a blessing, an indispensable component of the social transformation landscape. From each according to his ability, to each according to his needs, according each and every citizen opportunities to aspire to self-sufficiency through the ability to acquire skills and qualifications, eventually leading to improvement in standards of living for themselves and their families. Social transformation programs have been at the heart of everything that PNM governments create and develop for the benefit of all, and are exemplified in affordable housing, free healthcare, free universal primary and secondary education, reflected in exceptionally low cost of water and electricity, the support for sport and the creative arts, maintenance of a safety net for the poor and vulnerable, and I can go on and on, Madam Speaker. Today, however, my focus is on the Ministry of Social Development and Family Services and its role in the discharge of the government's social responsibilities. But before I do that, Madam Speaker, I want to make reference to the Leader of the Opposition's presentation this morning. And I can only sum it up that presentation, Madam Speaker, has been reminiscent of smoke and mirrors. All the Leader of the Opposition sought to do this morning was to try and obscure the truth of this situation. And that is the fact that we have an excellent budget. We have been presented with a budget that seeks to enhance the quality of life of most of our citizens, Madam Speaker, especially the vulnerable. So what did we get this morning? An attempt to distort the facts and to distort truth. Our economy is in recovery, but that was denied. Our economy is experiencing growth and is expected to continue to experience growth into the medium term. That was also denied. It is interesting, though, Madam Speaker, that the pundits have not denied this, but the Leader of the Opposition sought to do that this morning. Smoke and mirrors, Madam Speaker. The Leader of the Opposition also lost me, and the integrity of her whole presentation diminished when she used the analogy of doctors and patients and hospital. Because all that came to mind, Madam Speaker, was the fact that her government would have opened the Couva Children's Hospital when they know it was not operational and it could not have functioned, so it was a farce. And that summarized her presentation this morning, a farce, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I also want to mention the presentation of the Honorable Member from Pointe-a-Pierre. Now, I recognize and understand that he's passionate about Petrotrin because that is in his constituency. But, Madam Speaker, where was that passion? Where was that interest over the last 8 years, during their period of their administration, when Petrotrin had already been in trouble? He stood up here today and he said he had a plan. Why was that plan not implemented so that Petrotrin could have started to recover? He also mentioned that this government has not been sharing information, and they were not aware, and the public was not aware of what was to happen with Petrotrin. But, Madam Speaker, the Honorable Prime Minister, Dr. Keith Rowley, almost a year ago, spoke to this nation and would have indicated what the situation was with Petrotrin. And except for those who may have buried their heads in the sand, it was very, very, very clear that action had to be taken with Petrotrin to preserve the patrimony of Trinidad and Tobago. And so, Madam Speaker, I go now to my area of core responsibility, and that is the delivery of social services, including income support through the provision of 3 major grants: the Senior Citizen Pension, the Disability Assistance Grant, and the Public Assistance Grant. Now, it was very interesting today. Normally, those on the other side label this government as uncaring. But Madam Speaker, having heard this budget and having read their budget presentation, they know that they could not have come here today and said this government is not caring. So they have gone with a new word, incompetent. I sat here and then I got tired of listening to it. The leader of the opposition used the word incompetent at least 8 times. But ladies and gentlemen, by the time I am finished, and after all of our colleagues are finished, this nation will be left as to no uncertainty that this is a very competent, if not one of the most competent governments to lead this country. And so, Madam Speaker, the Ministry of Social Development and Family Services continues to maintain the safety net and to provide income support so that we can ensure the protection of the vulnerable in our society and try to cushion the impact of poverty. And this is all in keeping with the PNM's philosophy of caring and putting people first, the UN's 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, which seeks to end poverty in all forms, and Trinidad and Tobago's National Development Strategy, Vision 2030, putting people first and improving service delivery. Madam Speaker, over the last 3 years, this government's commitment to care for and protect our poor and vulnerable citizens was very evident in the fact that despite our straitened economic circumstances, we maintained all grants, all benefits, all services at existing levels, with no diminution, no reduction in quantum or frequency of payment. Madam Speaker, in 2018, we spent $4.4 billion on 93% of our recurrent expenditure on these 3 major grants. This year, in 2019, Madam Speaker, we will be again spending approximately 93% of our budget, but this time it has been increased to $4.6 billion, Madam Speaker. But even though government has now reversed the decline and stabilized our economy, we have to be still prudent, Madam Speaker. So although the turnaround has begun, this government will continue to exercise prudence, for we are not yet out of the woods. And so, Madam Speaker, the proposed increase in the cap of combined monthly incomes to $6,000 will result in increases for 27,263 existing pensioners, Madam Speaker. The minimum senior citizen pension of $3,500 per month will be maintained. Although the turnaround has begun, this government has to be cognizant of the fact that pensions in state enterprises for which the government has a say could be similarly affected, and this government at this time cannot afford to increase pensions in state enterprises. And so, Madam Speaker, what we have done, the 7 current bands will be consolidated into 3, and we will introduce a new band of more than $4,500 to $5,500. So the maximum income to qualify for senior citizen pension will increase from $4,500 to $5,500. This increase in the maximum income to qualify enables an estimated 2,500 persons who are already 65 years of age to access and qualify for a senior citizen pension. Madam Speaker, and I say here now to Mrs. Ward in Diego Martin and a constituent, Mr. Hardin in Aruka, they will now qualify for the senior citizen pension. Persons receiving the maximum pension of $3,500 will increase by 1,817 persons to 69,208. 24,636 persons will receive an increase of $500, and 2,627 persons will receive an increase of $1,000. Madam Speaker, this measure is expected to cost an additional $194 million, but it will be money well spent. And I just want to inform this August House and the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago that Trinidad and Tobago and Guyana are the only countries that provide a senior citizen pension that is non-contributory. And while ours stands at $3,500, Guyana pays the equivalent of $612, Madam Speaker. So we are indeed taking care of our elderly in Trinidad and Tobago. Madam Speaker, the budget also proposes an increase in the public assistance grant. Now, this grant is normally paid to children with a disability, adults who are unable to work because they have a disability, children whose parents may be deceased or incarcerated or may have abandoned the families, the spouses of imprisoned persons or who are unable to work because they have to care for their children. So these are people in our society who are very vulnerable, Madam Speaker. And there are 23,885 such persons. And we also have 1,024 children with special needs. So, Madam Speaker, while the increase is $150, this is very important and will be very, very well received by these persons because of the impact it will have on their ability to take care of themselves. Now, Madam Speaker, the special child grant currently is paid via check, and these checks are printed at the Ministry of Social Development and Family Services. So there are times based on administrative reasons where these checks may be late. This has not been a good thing because it has produced undue hardship on families, and so a number of them have been accessing the public assistance grant. But what happens in situations like that, Madam Speaker, if a family has 2 children who may have a special need, the sum that they are paid is less than if they were receiving 2 special child grants. Because in that case, instead of receiving $1,600, they would receive $1,400. So, Madam Speaker, what we have proposed is to have children paid under the disability assistance grant. In that instance, they will not be subjected to a means test, and they will also receive $1,500, Madam Speaker. This would represent an increase of $750 for some persons, and an increase of between $350 to $700 per child, or $1,400 to $1,600 for 2 children. Now, Madam Speaker, I heard the leader of the opposition speak very disparagingly about an increase of $100. But for those whose pockets are well lined and their savings may be in the 6 and 7 figures, $100 may not mean a lot. But for our poor and vulnerable citizens, an increase of $150 means a lot. And Madam Speaker, Madam Speaker, I want to give this House relay a situation that occurred at my constituency office to this House so that we would understand how important $100 can be. A young lady with 2 children, a single parent, came to my office, and her situation was such that she needed assistance. It would have taken some time for her to access the food card or the public assistance grant. So the staff at my office gave her $100 and took her to the grocery. And Madam Speaker, that young lady was able to shop for groceries for the week for herself and 2 children on that $100. And Madam Speaker, have anybody in this House ever been to the grocery and the bill came exactly rounded to $100? I think not. But you see, God takes care of the poor and the needy, and that was done on that day. Yes, and this government, Madam Speaker, by providing this increase, continues to take care of such people. And I just wish to inform this House that the lady did in fact get a food card and her public assistance grant. And so, Madam Speaker, the disability assistance grant, in addition to removing the eligibility age for children from, the measure to remove the age eligibility and allow children under 18 to access this grant is nothing short of a stroke of genius by the Ministry of Finance, because it now enables middle and lower income families to access this grant, because it is not means tested. And ladies and gentlemen, our experience has been for a number of middle income and lower income families, it has been very onerous taking care of children with special needs on $800 or $11.50 a month. So now, because of this increase to $1,500 and the fact that they cannot be means tested and told that they do not qualify, this is of very, very significant importance, Madam Speaker, to that those 23,245 persons. And of course, Madam Speaker, the ministry continues with its general assistance grants. All of these grants continue at the same quantum. There will be no reduction. So, for example, victims of natural disaster can still access grants to the value of $10,000 to replace household appliances. For house repairs, they can access grants of $15,000. For the rewiring, up to $25,000. And for sanitation, $15,000. Madam Speaker, we will still be providing assistance in terms of the funeral grant of $7,000, rental assistance grants of $2,500 for up to 6 months, and of course, Madam Speaker, one that has grown in great importance, the provision of a grant to purchase prosthetics up to $40,000, but in exceptional circumstances, that grant can be provided up to $75,000, Madam Speaker. And in 2018, we would have spent $1.7 million to provide prosthetics to 49 persons. Madam Speaker, I now come to an area that seems to be of great importance and a thorn in the side of the members on the other side, and that is food support. Madam Speaker, the fact that this government, this administration, has been able to save $150 million by taking action that resulted in 18,000 persons who knew they were not eligible for the food card come out of the system seems to be a problem for the members on the other side. But, Madam Speaker, neither myself nor this government will take that to heart. I personally prefer to be disparaged for doing right than to be lauded or recognized for doing what is wrong. And so, Madam Speaker, this government will continue to provide food support to families that are in need and unable to provide a nutritional meal for themselves every day. Those on the other side like to talk about this government is incompetent. But, Madam Speaker, they would have spent $97 million and an additional $20 million in settling a court matter on the biometric system. And this system was only used to support 3,158 persons, or 2% of the recipients. And it was a system that was fraught with corruption and wastage, and no database was maintained, so it was almost impossible to determine what were the numbers and how many persons were being in fact serviced. But that was not by accident, Madam Speaker, that was by choice. But having taken all the action that we have taken, Madam Speaker, we are now assured that the 24,300 persons who have been paid the food support are in fact persons that are eligible for such support. And so, Madam Speaker, this budget provides for an increase of $100 per month in food support. Now, the leader of the opposition would have indicated that 18,000 persons could not have been cheaters. And she looked across on our side and looked at us as if to say, you all cannot be right, you have to be crazy. There could not have been 18,000 persons in the system who were not eligible. But, Madam Speaker, when we look at the fact that during their tenure, every month, each MP was given 50 food cards to give to constituents. When you total that for 5 years, it comes up to 87,000 food cards. Now, if they would have given out 87,000 temporary food cards, it is very believable, Madam Speaker, that 18,000 food cards were in fact given out to persons who were not eligible. But this government, Madam Speaker, has taken action to ensure that only persons who need that support are getting it and will continue to get it. Madam Speaker, this government is very concerned with moving our clients from a state of dependency to one of self-sufficiency. And what we have been doing, Madam Speaker, is taking action to ensure that. This is a totally different approach from the one that was taken by those on the other side when they were in government. They seem to be content to keep our citizens, keep the clients of the ministry in a state of being dependent. And Madam Speaker, we can all understand that when people rely on you for their income, for their very livelihood, it's a means of control. And I believe, Madam Speaker, that is something in which the leaders, those on the upper side engaged. But we, Madam Speaker, our intention is not just to reduce poverty, but to bring our clients to a state of independence. And to this end, we seek to educate them. And so we have our adult education programs. Currently, there are 4,000 persons enrolled in 26 courses at 26 centers. We also seek to ensure their entrepreneurial development, and to this end, a seed grant valued at $15,000 is provided. And this grant, Madam Speaker, is primarily for the benefit of the ministry's clients. This grant, Madam Speaker, is now conditional on the completion of training, because it is not our intention to just give a grant, but to ensure that when the grant is given, the person can manage a small business and manage it successfully. So we are currently working in collaboration with the Central Bank of Trinidad and Tobago, and before a grant is approved, those applicants must engage in training that entails marketing, customer service, record keeping, financial management, and the mindset and practice for the entrepreneur. And Madam Speaker, this year, a couple months ago, we had 67 persons graduating from the training and receiving their seed grant. Madam Speaker, those on the other side during their tenure were supposed to have a developmental component to the food support program. It was called Rise Up. But Madam Speaker, it would seem, I don't know if it is they didn't have any ease, but that fell flat, Madam Speaker, because it never got off the ground. This government is in the process of introducing what we call our social transformation and empowerment program, Uplifting People Step Up. And this is essentially a program of psychosocial support designed to facilitate families through a social protection framework from program entry to exit. We will work with economically challenged and other vulnerable families experiencing psychosocial barriers which prevent such families from achieving their fullest potential. Madam Speaker, this process will involves a process where short-term assistance in the form of a grant, exposure to developmental programs, life skill training, and skill-enhancing tools are combined over a period of up to 2 years. And a key feature of this component is that a family caseworker is assigned to provide continuous support to the family. Madam Speaker, the ministry is currently in the process of recruiting social workers to facilitate the full implementation of this program. Caring for and protecting our vulnerable. Madam Speaker, this government recognizes that the civil society engagement is a key success factor in sustainable development. And we also recognize that we need to partner with these organizations to assist us with the socially displaced, with the elderly, and with persons with disability. And to this end, Madam Speaker, we continue to pay subvention to 24 NGOs and 3 statutory boards, including the Trinidad and Tobago Association for Retarded Children, the Trinidad and Tobago Association for the Hearing Impaired, and the Trinidad and Tobago Blind Welfare Association. Madam Speaker, last year, we budgeted $43.7 million to provide subventions to these organizations. And this year, we are projecting to increase it by $13,207,000, Madam Speaker. In caring for our elderly, we continue to provide free transportation on our public transport service and the ferry service. We also provide free transportation to our elderly and persons with disability on our Eldamo services. And Madam Speaker, over the last period, we would have made 10,200 trips transporting such persons. I am very happy to inform this House once again, Madam Speaker, that Cabinet has approved the National Policy on Persons with Disabilities, and in September, the Ministry was finally able to lay the National Policy for Persons with Disability before this Parliament. That document, that policy, Madam Speaker, will help us in addressing the demands and rights of persons with disabilities, in advancing legislation and increasing the role of assistive services to support full inclusion of these persons. Madam Speaker, the National Enrichment Center. After 3 years, Madam Speaker, we have finally been able to take all of the corrective actions that needed to be taken after those on the other side would have opened that center while it was still a construction site, while there was still remedial work to be done, and while none of the statutory approvals had been obtained. We are awaiting the certificate of completion, and that is supposed to be provided. It should have been provided today, and we now have an opening date for the operationalization of that center at the end of October, Madam Speaker. Initially, the center we will operate it as a resource center where persons with disabilities and their respective organization can have access to the center for data information, as a meeting space, as a space for recreational activities, for use of the pool for therapy. And we expect to transition to full operationalization by the end of fiscal 2019. Madam Speaker, our community care program, which provides accommodation for persons, elderly persons, who may have been abandoned at hospital or who may have been in a home for the elderly but were subject to elder abuse. We currently have 86 such persons in 22 homes. And there has been an increase of 31 over the last period, Madam Speaker, and this is linked to the removal of persons who were subject to elder abuse to a safe environment. In 2018, Madam Speaker, we would have addressed 69 reports of elder abuse and would have resolved 79% of such cases. Under the geriatric adolescent program, Madam Speaker, we continue to provide caregivers to assist elderly persons and persons with disabilities who are unable to care for themselves. Currently, we have 600 caregivers within the system, and they have provided assistance to 1,719 persons over the last period. But, Madam Speaker, we are recognizing there is an increased demand for this service, and so the ministry is working towards gathering all of the data to support a recommendation for an increase in the number of caregivers so that we can ensure that we can take care of our elderly and persons with disabilities. Subventions are also paid currently to 4 senior activity centers, and this is to ensure that there are opportunities for our elderly for active lifestyle. Madam Speaker, over 2018, we would have spent $3.2 million on these senior activity centers. Our socially displaced. Madam Speaker, the last head count that was done last year would have indicated that there are 414 persons who live on the streets. 392 males and 22 females. Port Shamrock in San Fernando and St. Vincent de Paul, that is responsible for the Center for Socially Displaced Persons in Port-au-Spain, currently provides services to 160 socially displaced persons. And what they provide, Madam Speaker, is shelter, a place to sleep, a place to bathe, and a meal. At our New Horizons facility, Madam Speaker, where we have socially displaced persons with mental health issues, we had 46 new residents enrolling 6 graduated from the program, and 5 of them would have been able to seek employment during the period of their stay with us. The Piparo Center, which deals with persons with substance abuses, continues to be a success story. We would have had 40 persons going into the system during this period. It has not finished yet, so we have not had any graduates, but they continue to engage in agriculture and have been able to provide all of their vegetables, all of their seasonings, and 133 pounds of tilapia from their tilapia production system. Madam Speaker, the Street Dwellers Working Committee, the committee that was established to oversee the implementation of the Street Dwellers Working Committee report has been established. Thus far, we have selected 2 locations for the establishment of assessment centers and transitional housing, 1 in Port-au-Spain and 1 in Cocorite. And I'm very happy to report, Madam Speaker, that the center in Cocorite will cater for children and women, because currently there is no place for women and children. We have also finalized the design brief for the center that will be established in Port-au-Spain. Madam Speaker, a few weeks ago, I delivered a statement in this August House on our social mitigation plan, and at that time, Parliament and the nation was updated on the ministry's ongoing work in this area. Thus far, we have implemented the standard means test. We have developed a framework for the step-up model. Our public education campaign on financial security is in place and ongoing in collaboration with the central bank. We have established the 2 committees to guide the operations of the one-stop shop model, the social support and empowerment unit, and to oversee implementation of the social mitigation plan. So, Madam Speaker, we are well on our way with the full implementation of the social mitigation plan. The family plays a critical role in the nurturing and socialization of individuals, Madam Speaker, and it is also very important to the socio-economic prosperity of our country. And within recent times, there has been great concern with respect to the declining stability of families and the resultant negative impact on communities and country. The social ills of domestic violence, child and elder abuse, indiscipline, and violence is also of great concern. And to this end, Madam Speaker, the ministry pursued 2 major policy initiatives aimed at safeguarding the family. One was implementation of the National Parenting Policy for Trinidad and Tobago, and it was laid in this Honorable House as a green paper to facilitate wider public consultations. We are also working on developing the National Family Policy for Trinidad and Tobago, because the intention is to provide a nurturing and secure environment for the family. The Ministry of Social Development and Family Services collaborated with the Gender and Child Affairs Division of the Office of the Prime Minister and hosted our inaugural National Symposium on the Family. The response was overwhelming, Madam Speaker, and the feedback from that symposium is being incorporated into the draft National Family Policy. We also launched our national campaign on values, attitudes, and behaviors, because we recognize that we need to go back to a state of civic-mindedness and a return to values and morals and such basic things as good morning and thank you. And Madam Speaker, that campaign has been launched and it has been rolled out. We also hosted 7 community parenting workshops, and we have established a number of community-based support groups. The National Family Services outreach programs, Let's Talk, and our radio program, Let's Talk, has been very successful. As a result, we have experienced an increase in our client base, and we have responded to 8,041 requests for counseling, referral services, information, and co-parent counseling. Madam Speaker, I want to deal now with the steps that we have taken to improve the operations of the ministry. Madam Speaker, we are currently in the process of transitioning the recipients of the Senior Citizen Pension, the Public Assistance Grant, and the Disability Assistance Grant to a direct method of payment. Thus far, we have transitioned 80,668 persons, and this represents 56% of that population. What this means, Madam Speaker, is that these clients no longer have to worry about checks being lost, checks being stolen, or checks being late. The money is deposited directly into their bank account, and they can access it on the same day. We have introduced our standard means test, and that has improved assessment greatly, Madam Speaker, because it is now standardized across the board. A read of the Auditor General reports to last year would have revealed that there was one local board where 4 different forms were being used for means testing. What this meant, Madam Speaker, is that one person may have come in and been assessed as being qualifying for the grant, and another person may not have been. But with the standard means test now, across the board, all persons will be assessed in the same manner. Madam Speaker, we sought to have an integrated IT system purchased on behalf of the ministry. This was being done through iGov-TT. They went out to tender, and the tender was not successful. Madam Speaker, the ministry decided to use our in-house capabilities to develop an integrated system that may not provide all of the things that we require, but one that can facilitate and improve and enhance our effectiveness and efficiency. And Madam Speaker, I'm very pleased to announce that we do in fact now have such a system, and this system allows for simplified data sharing and collaboration across all local boards. This will eliminate double-dipping and duplication. It also will result in a reduction of processing time for applications. There will be more complete information on the database. And because of online registration, we will not have the problem of lost files. Madam Speaker, one of the key features of this that the public of Trinidad and Tobago, I believe, will be very much interested in is that the public will be able to go online and self-assess. They can access the means test form and do their own self-assessment, and that will remove a situation where persons complain about they qualify but they were told they don't qualify. They can do their own self-assessment, print that form, and come into the ministry with it, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, we continue to train the staff in the ministry, particularly our frontline staff, because we recognize that we can have the best grants, the best programs, unless we have an accompanying excellent customer service. This can detract from what we are providing. And so we continue to provide customer service where we seek to improve the knowledge, the behaviors, and the attitudes of our staff. And we have seen improvement, Madam Speaker, in that there have been a reduction in the number of complaints and a reduction in the number of persons complaining that they have been taking too long to receive their grants. We continue to educate the population of Trinidad and Tobago about what the ministry offers. And thus, for this period, we would have had 40 sessions, education awareness sessions. And based on those sessions, Madam Speaker, we have been receiving very good reviews, and we have more persons who are really in need from the press areas coming into the ministry to access the grants that are being offered. Madam Speaker, I would now take some time to speak to my constituents of Lupino-Bonner West. Madam Speaker, I wish to thank all of the constituents of Lupino-Bonner West for the support they have provided over the last 3 years. I wish to thank all of them for coming out whenever there are meetings, whenever we have our caravans, and providing information on what is happening in their area and how they feel about different things in the government and in the community. And Madam Speaker, I just want to remind and say to the constituents of Lupino-Bonner West, during the campaign, I made 2 promises. One was to get water into Windy Hill. And Madam Speaker, I am very pleased to inform this August House that water was in the pipes of residents of Windy Hill. But I also want to exhort my constituents. The government is working in your behalf. We have worked very hard to bring water into Windy Hill, and they have over 400 households, but only 40 of you have registered so far to be connected. So I am exhorting you, work together with us, go to WASA, pay for your connection so that you can have a water supply to your home. We were also very successful in having an intake put in place at McDavid Strait, so the persons who live in Lower Surrey Village and at Soap Hill have had no problems with water this year, Madam Speaker. My second promise was to get electricity to the persons at Upper Bertie Road in Five Rivers. They have not had a supply of electricity ever. And Madam Speaker, working together with TNTech and with their electrification project, we were able to bring electricity to Upper Bertie Road in Five Rivers. And for that, Madam Speaker, I am very grateful, and I take the opportunity to thank TNTech. For some reason, Madam Speaker, the residents of Ulex Drive, Fern Drive, and Pointe-a-Pierre in La Florissant had not had their streets paved in the last 25 years. And this was a burning issue for them. I wish to report that working together with the Ministry of Rural and Local Government, those 3 streets were paved, and we got a lanyard in that we got elm and holly paved also. And I know the residents of La Florissant are very happy for that. We also had a problem with flooding in phase 1, and we have since
Honourable
had
Member,
a drain.
your original speaking time is now spent. You're entitled to 10 more minutes to complete your presentation.
Madam Speaker. We had a drain constructed and the road paved, and that problem with flooding has been alleviated in phase 1 in La Florissant. Madam Speaker, one of the greatest need of the constituents of Lopino, Bonner West, based on constituents who visit the constituency office and those who come out when we have the caravan in the respective areas, is the issue of housing. And Madam Speaker, I'm very pleased to report that within the constituency, we have had the Bonner North and the Trestrail housing developments, phase 1 completed and houses distributed. In our neighboring areas of Malabar, Bonner South, and River runs through, we have also had phases completed and houses distributed. And I'm very happy, based on feedback from some of my constituents, some of them have benefited and are very thankful, Madam Speaker. In terms of plans for 2019, the HDC has indicated that they would be installing play parks in Pine Ridge Development, Cleaver Heights, and Guanapo in Five Rivers. The community centers in Surrey, that is going to be renovated and upgraded, and Tacarigua is finally going to get a new community center. Great news, Madam Speaker, for the people of Lopino. Based on the budget, Madam Speaker, we can also expect to have landslips, flooding, our drainage, and roads addressed. And this, Madam Speaker, will benefit residents of Lopino, Martinez in Arima, Cumberbatch in Arima, Five Rivers, Paradise, and Tagarigua. Madam Speaker, I am saying to my constituents, we are in this together, and thus far it has worked very well. Madam Speaker, as I close, I wish to thank the staff of the Ministry of Social Development and Family Services. All the achievements that we have made would not have been possible without their dedication and their hard work. I also wish to thank the staff of the constituency office in Lopino, Bonner West. And again, I thank my constituents. Of course, I thank the Minister of Finance and his hardworking staff in the Ministry of Finance, because without them and the Prime Minister leading, we would not have had this exceptional budget. And Madam Speaker, as I close, I thank you for the opportunity to support this exceptional turnaround budget. And as I close with a quote from political analyst Mr. Winford James. in the Express of October 4, 2018, when he would have stated, and I quote, "The Rowley administration has managed to compose one of the more positive budgets I have seen in some time." And this has left me with a good taste in the mouth. The 2018-2019 budget is one of mostly good vibes. Madam Speaker, I thank you.
Yes.
Member for Kamuta-Mansinilla.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Let's return
Madam-
to reality.
Madam Speaker, I thank you very much for this opportunity, and as I rise to contribute to this budget debate, I would like to congratulate
Members, the crosstalk is getting a little too loud. I would like to hear the member for Kamuta-Mansinilla. Please proceed.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I would like to congratulate our opposition leader who made an outstanding contribution, comprehensive contribution. It demonstrated her visionary ability to lead this country back to prosperity. And of course, I would like to congratulate member for Pointe-a-Pierre for his sterling contribution as well. You know, Madam Speaker, I can't help but feel that this budget is really a runaround.
Okay, members, the excessive talk and the loud talk, I would ask you all again to check it. It is now 4:31. I understand in a normal sitting now will be tea time, but please compose yourself. Member for Kamuta-Mansinilla.
Thank you. Madam Speaker, I just want to go back a little bit, to a budget presentation in 2015. It starts off like this, the Minister of Finance. In addition, consistent with our 2015 election manifesto promise, I propose to increase the cap on joint incomes received by retirees in respect of national insurance and old age pensions. The new cap will now be $5,000 or an additional $500 per month, which will cost $160 million and will put more money in the pockets of 88,000 senior citizens. This measure will take effect on December 1st, 2015. Then today, I'm hearing the minister, and of course the minister said the same thing, and I'm going to repeat. Madam Speaker, we are continuing to improve the well-being of our elderly by increasing the cap on joint incomes received by retirees in respect of national insurance and old age pensions. This new cap will now be $6,000,
Okay, well,
thus allowing.
is she going to give us the quotation?
All right, so 1 minute. 1 minute, please. Member for Aruka Maloney, if it is that you're making an interruption, I expect you'll make it in a particular way. And secondly, all members are either referred to by their constituency or by their portfolio. Okay, so that I don't know that you're really asking to make an interruption in the proper way.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. In receipt of both a NIS pension and a senior citizen's pension, to receive $3,000 a month from the NIS and up to a further $3,000 per month in the senior citizen's pension. Madam Speaker, this measure will not only benefit 27,263 elderly individuals from the existing senior citizens grant base of 95,300 individuals, but would add over 2,000 to the senior citizens net, bringing it to over 97,000 elderly individuals in receipt of a pension, 10,000 more than when we came into office. The cost of this adjustment is $194 million, and the measure will take effect on January 1st, 2019. Madam Speaker, first, in 2015, the increase in the cap was supposed to benefit 88,000 senior citizens, according to what I am reading here, which is verbatim notes. So I'm not making up the figures. And here today, in 2018, the figures are now 27,263.
In terms of the 2015 quotation, is that the Hansard? Yes. And therefore you'll have to give us the reference, if it is the Hansard.
It is taken from the Hansard. 2015, October.
Honorable members, member for St. Joseph, if you just give the member from Kumutu Manzanilla an opportunity to respond to the question that I've just asked. If it is Hansard, you will have to give us the proper citation. Please.
October 2015, Madam Speaker, it would have been on a Monday, I believe it was. And the Minister of Finance, Honorable Colm Ember, was the Minister of Finance who gave the statement. And the same thing, the second statement, it is the current budget debate that we are debating. This budget, of which the Honorable Minister Colm Ember had given this statement. And of course, this figure of 27,293, it has just been confirmed by the Honorable Minister of Social Development. So, I am going based on the figures that have been put to this Honorable House. It means, therefore, that if it is 97,000 persons, according to the statement of the budget, of elderly senior citizens, and only 27,263 are going to be able to benefit from this cap, it means that 69,737 senior citizens will not benefit. And therefore, if they will not benefit, it means, therefore, it is incorrect to tell the population that they will benefit in no uncertain way, and therefore, I am concerned with my political leader that this budget is a runaround. We have the public assistance grant. Madam Speaker, the increase is as follows. First of all, they're proposing, the government is proposing to remove to allow for the public grant assistance to be increased. What is not being told is that it is increased by $150. So one person would move from 1,150 to 1,300, and two persons from 1,400 to 1,550 and onwards. But it is not per person, you know, and I think the population needs to understand this. When you say two persons and three persons and four persons getting $150, it is for the household. So it's not one person getting, if you have four persons in the household, that each person will be getting $1,550. It will only be $1,550 per household. And therefore, it must be said and clarified, because I think that this government is causing this turnaround to really be a runaround for this country. You know, and then at the end of the day, I'm hearing about the parenting symposium. Madam Speaker, do you know, under the baby grant, when political leader and Prime Minister...
Madam Speaker, speak to the children, please.
Honorable member for Oropuch, nobody in here I expect is a child. And therefore, if you want to if you want to raise a particular standing order, which you're entitled to do, I think you're seasoned enough to know to do it in a proper way. And I therefore ask all members to be respectful of the other. I again want to caution members, particularly all members to my right. There's a running commentary and there's excessive crosstalk. And again, in the spirit of respect, member for Kamutu Mantinilla has my ear, and I wish that all members will afford me the opportunity to listen. Member for Kamutu Mantinilla.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. So they changed the name, the government changes the name from the baby grant, because in the baby grant, you had a parenting aspect which was very important. So they removed the baby grant, removed the funding, and just have a parenting symposium. And that is supposed to be successful. How many persons attended? How many persons have changed lives? Nothing here. But you know, with the baby grant, when we launched it, we had all those figures in place as to how many persons attended, how many persons benefited, how many persons realized that there was something in their lives that needed to be changed. And that would come through education. And so, and I just want to touch on these things that the minister has spoken about before I get into my substantive debate. The minister spoke about operations and a direct method being utilized to deposit into the grants into various bank accounts. And I'm asking the question, how do we monitor and evaluate whether the monies that have been, the grants that have been given to, whether it is senior citizens or for public assistance or whatever it is, how do we measure whether or not the persons who are receiving these grants are actually using the grants for the purpose that they are intended to? And usually when you have the card, because the card, when you go to a grocery or to the various outlets that we had mandated under the PP, you would have been able to see, and you would have been able to enforce that persons could not buy anything other than foodstuff or pharmaceutical items. This cannot be done when you have a direct method system in place. There's no monitoring and evaluation. And therefore, how can you really assess someone at the end of the day? And it comes back to the point of the biometric card. And I must speak about the biometric card, especially when we have been told that this has been full of corruption and so forth. It is nothing further from the truth. Under the People's Partnership of our esteemed leader, Kamala Prasad-Bissessar, the biometric card was put into place for a number of reasons. One, it was a case management system. Currently, there are no case management systems in place to monitor and to evaluate the clients who come in. You are looked upon, you say, okay, you're on this grant for 6 months, let's take you off and see if it is that you have been getting any better. And that's not how you monitor someone. That's not how you evaluate someone. And I can say that with all certainty because even in my constituency, Madam Speaker, I have had a number of persons who have been on grants and they have been removed. And they have been told that you have to reapply in 6 months. They have been taken off several grants because it's several different persons I'm dealing with. Over a year ago, they have been going to reapply. There are either no, at one time there were no staff in place because all the staff were sent on leave because they were doing a transition. So they only had OJTs and they could not take the information. They could not even assess anyone. And so you had a number of persons going in and could not be assessed, and so they were told that they had to come back. So you have persons who have been taken off the system and are still awaiting to be assessed. And this is unfair because, you know, at the end of the day, you know, the Honorable Minister is questioning, oh, we had 50 food cards going out to the MP's office. And do you know what used to happen, Madam Speaker? Sometimes a person came in need, and while the ministry would have been doing their own assessment because the office staff were in fact trained to assess persons. And while the the person was awaiting the full assessment from the ministry, the MP's office would facilitate by helping the person for a minimum of 3 months, because within 3 months, you would have been assured, you would have been assessed, either you were qualified to receive a grant or you didn't. And at that point, a decision would be made to have the person transition into another area. And so there was a reason for it. The reason is that no one left at all hungry. And so it is commendable that the staff would have put $100. But how many persons can do that? And so therefore, we're not dealing with one person coming into an office. You have hundreds of persons coming into an office. And further to that, you have persons who will require help, especially when you have so many persons losing their jobs within the last couple of years, which is no fault of theirs. And therefore, the government must be cognizant of the fact that there are persons who require the assistance almost immediately and cannot wait to be assessed in a couple of months or a couple of weeks. It is unfair. And so I just wanted to address those few things and just say that, I think we have had enough of the running around. And let us get to the fact that this government really is incapable of doing the necessary checks and balances to bring about good governance in this country. After 4 years, and we can't have good governance, I don't think it will happen again. We have the issue of flood grants. We are an island that is in the tropics, and therefore we will always have the issue of hurricanes, rainy season, and flooding as a result of it. Probably if we had the drains cleaned and we had proper infrastructure, after 4 years, we probably would not have had flooding. But we don't have it. PP government isn't in place, so we don't have it. We have after 4 budgets, we still have to have flood grants. After the last flooding in 2017, we still have outstanding flood grants, persons waiting to receive their flood grants. And it begs the question. I mean, maybe we should ask some ministers to come into our constituency and, maybe get a bath, and we would have compensation, because within 2 weeks, Madam Speaker, within 2 weeks of a wetting, there was compensation. And therefore, it really begs the question, what really will get the attention of the ministry to facilitate across the board all the constituencies where there are incidences of flood and so forth. And coming back to the issue of the biometric card, the biometric card allows that if anybody, because oftentimes you find someone might get ill, and because they are living in a particular area, they have to be cared for in another constituency because of a family member taking care of them. If that person moves, Madam Speaker, their grant is cut. And because it's cut, because they have to now go through the whole process of being assessed, they have to be able to go to the necessary agency within that constituency that they're in and identify themselves until a field officer goes to ensure that the person is in fact at the place that they in fact are still in the condition that they're in for the purpose of receiving a grant and all of that. They will not get their grant reinstated. Now, mind you, although it may be backdated, you may get a full refund for the couple of months that it may have been cut for. It's still an inconvenience, because at the end of the day, people still have their lives to continue with, whether it's to pay rent, eat food, or whatever it is. And therefore, I am saying that with the biometric card, what it allowed to do is it not only dealt with files being lost, it also dealt with that anywhere that person went in. If they lived in Tobago and they came to Trinidad as a result of the illness, even in Trinidad, they did not have to have a file being taken to, because the biometric card would have allowed for the system, because it's a case management system, would have allowed for that person to not lose any income as a result of their transition. And so I think it's very important for the government to understand that it's not just a waste of time and how many persons were enrolled. Madam Speaker, that actual biometric card system was activated in August of 2015, and then we had elections in September. Good grief, how many persons are expected to have enrolled at the same time? 1 million people? It's a work in progress. It did not give anything a chance to do. They just saw it. It was pee-pee. They don't like it. Cut, cut, cut. You know, Madam Speaker, critically, what happens at the end of a budget is determined largely by what was done and what was not done within that specific period of time. And clearly, this budget is yet another one of many errors that has been made by this government. A budget with no sense of direction, one that lacks formal preparation before, during, and after its intended preparation and implementation. And therefore, this is a budget that is designed to fail the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago for yet another year. There seems to be very little hope in this budget, a budget that is focused not only on that is focused only on dollars, but no sense. A budget that lacks a clear and concise sense of direction, one that is short on details in moving this economy forward. And I just wanted to take something from the PNM's manifesto. I'm not going to display it, Madam Speaker, but it's the 2015, page 58. Let's do this together. And so it says from the social sector programs, and I quote, "The PNM believes that the main aim of social sector policy is reduce poverty and improve social justice with the objective of ensuring a more stable society." Madam Speaker, we couldn't be further from the truth. This country is far from stable. And therefore, I ask the question, really and truly, what is happening in this budget? We have witnessed mismanagement at the highest level, and taxpayers are now called upon to shoulder the financial burden. How is this budget, Mr. Finance Minister, expected to remedy this injustice to the most vulnerable, the poor, the differently abled, families living below the poverty line, and pensioners? I tell you, Madam Speaker, this administration will pay a political price for this, and it is coming sooner than later. We have witnessed over the last 3 years the dismantling of some critical social assistance provided to the most vulnerable, a drastic reduction in the distribution of food cards, and in Boston, remove 18,000, as though 18,000 cards, is just 18,000 cards. 18,000 cards multiplied by 4 persons equals to 72,000 persons. 72,000 persons who would have had their food just like that, snatched away. You know how many persons went with a card, swiping, and can't get through? Why? Because it was stopped. No one called them to tell them. No one. 72,000 persons have been affected. A complete stop of the baby assistance grant. Stopping the stipend to mothers of children affected by cerebral palsy. Oh my goodness, I have a constituent, Madam Speaker, her son has cerebral palsy, and her grant was stopped while they're doing investigations, provided information. This is 5 months now, and the grant has not been reinstated. If you know what it means to take care of a child who has cerebral palsy, it is not the easiest thing. I as a minister, visited homes, Madam Speaker, and visited to see what the conditions were at the home, only to find out with shock and dismay. Sometimes parents can't even leave. They don't have a life. They don't have a life because they have to take care of a child who is in this manner. And therefore, you know, when you take away the only thing, because they can't go out and work. If they can't go out and work, what you want them to do? And so we gave support through the programs that our political leader had a vision to come about and say, this is what we have to do for our most vulnerable in society.
Empathy.
She empathizes. She cares. When you talk about care, that is care. You talk about love, that is love. And so you had the shutting down the street dweller removal program. The Coover Children's Hospital remains closed. Shutting down the People's Issues Resolution Coordinating Unit. Government's refusal to open a National Empowerment and Enrichment Center in Carsonfield. Madam Speaker, you would not believe that center would be able to help a lot of parents who can least afford it to begin with the therapy of the children. It is so important because it was going to be done at no cost, Madam Speaker. They want to open the hospital in Coover finally, and what do they say? At a cost. Why it is that the most vulnerable in our society must suffer. And they only suffer at the hands of the People's National Movement. This new cap for the pensioners, Madam Speaker, you ask a question. You hear the minister speak, and he says, oh, I'm going to increase fuel prices. And only, and super. Only super. Am I getting anything right? Only super.
That's how we behave.
And so you ask yourself, let's look at it. $100. $100 and not $100, sorry, it moves to $3.97, and so you have $3.97 and super gas, and you ask yourself, who is affected? $1. Who is affected by that? And I tell you who is affected. Public servants are affected. You know why? Because the only car they could afford to buy at most times would be a foreign use, and the foreign use is what uses super gas. Who does it affect? It affects every agricultural farmer. You know why? Because they use mist blowers, which use super gas. They use the whackers, which uses, the whackers use, they use super gas. Don't even try that. They use, Madam Speaker, they use super gas. And, so therefore it means that you're going to have an increase in foodstuff. Also the water pump that they use, that's a personal water pump, uses super gasoline. So you find that a lot of the agricultural products utilize super, which I guess the Minister of Finance did not realize that. You also have the senior citizens. For those who may have mobility problems, they may not have a car. I don't know about you, Madam Speaker, but just the other day, I was about to take a taxi, and I have no qualms with taking a taxi. But guess what? I would have taken a maxi coming down either the bus road or the main road. But guess what? After I come out of that maxi, the maxi don't make no drop inside, Maxi don't go inside. So when you come outside, so when you come out, you have to take a PH. And the PH uses super. So you ask yourself, really?
No Mustang for you.
No, I don't drive a Mustang. So you ask yourself, who is affected? The most vulnerable. Because sometimes if you have a child that has a disability or who is differently able, you don't have a vehicle, the maxi you take on one way and you have to go inside, you have to take a car. Whether it's a PH or a taxi, you still have to take a car. And those vehicles use super. So it impacts upon them. So this government is boasting. We gave you $150 increase when it's going right back into transportation. Because the Honorable Minister himself said it have transport. They don't need that. That is use diesel. And so I'm trying to bring really to the point to the Minister that really and truly is a runaround. All right? And it cannot be. This country does not have an efficient transit system, and as such, persons who can opt to purchase a foreign used vehicle. And so over the past couple of years, you would have had an increase in travel expenses because how much times fuel has been, the subsidies have been removed. So you have expenses to visit the doctor, the clinics, the social welfare office, the bank, the post office, the grocery, everywhere. And of course, all these things will require shoulder, and you're asking these same vulnerable persons to shoulder the increase. And there is no, it's like, he. That could not be so. That could not be so. That could not be so. And so when you hear certain questions, we're going to have persons being looked at for elections, next year. Ask yourself, is this an election gimmick? Is this an election gimmick? Is this what the increases are all about? And let us not shy away from this reality. That is how this administration views its aged population and the most vulnerable in our society as an afterthought. So 3 years came and went, they did not receive anything except the high cost of living. So this year, and maybe next year, we'll give them a little something to stay quiet, when in fact you have given them nothing. Our most vulnerable are placed in the very same position, but they are smarter than you think. They are not so easily fooled. They will see right through this, and are just waiting on that day to be called when they would return the favor. So you have ignored their cries. They too felt the impact of high food prices, especially when you remove VAT, when the VAT was reintroduced by this administration on all of the basic food items, which form part of the special diet and nutrition. And I wanted to say something, yeah? Our senior citizens and the differently able and the young do not consume the same food as we do because of their age and ailments. They are restricted to special diets. And of course, the cost could be quite exorbitant. And in some cases, so therefore this $100 increase on the food card really cannot even purchase one item of food listed on the special diet. And you have to consider that there's no medicine in the pharmacy. And so in the pharmacy, when you don't have any medication in the hospital pharmacies, you have to go out into the public pharmacies to purchase. And it's a very costly. There's specific medications required. You're talking about persons who have diabetes or heart disease or mobility issues or cancer. These basic drugs are unavailable in the hospital. And so many of our citizens in receipt of social grants are responsible for paying their utility bills, some rent, some assist their grandchildren, which is no fault of theirs, and particularly now with how many persons haven't lost their job. They may have to go back home even by their same mother and parents to help to take care of them. And so because of these extenuating circumstances. And so it is very important to understand that this $100 increase to the food card really is negated by this removal of the fuel subsidy. And it brings me to the point, why would we have a direct deposit system when you would not even be able to know whether the persons are getting the nutritional needs that are required? How can you report to the UN that these are things that you're put in place? These are how you deal with it. This is what is being bought. Because with the biometric system, you were able to identify, you could clearly see because it came up, it tagged you, because you would have been able to see, wait a minute, this person is not using their grant wisely. So you have to bring them in and ask them, why did you do that? So when you want to remove anyone off of a grant, you have in place a track record to see what is happening. But no. Instead, we should really seek to improve on the delivery of these services, which are utilized and consumed by the elderly and the most vulnerable. We should have opened the Couva Hospital. We should have ensured critical machines are always working, whether it's the X-ray, radiology, the echocardiogram, because we deal with the elderly and they have all these issues, and particularly with the disabled, with the differently abled. So that the vulnerable would not have to pay for these services, privately. It's very costly. I have persons come to my office asking for assistance, because sometimes they have to wait a year or two in the hospital. And they can't, because the doctor is saying you need to get this done immediately because we need to be able to assess what is really wrong with you. But they can't get the X-ray in the hospital. Either the X-ray machine is down or they don't have any of the actual X-rays. So it's important for us to understand that. We had enabled the elderly, the society, the environment, especially the differently able, by providing an efficient and hassle-free method of transportation system so they can do their everyday chores. And this was the Eldamo bus service. What is happening with that? We're not hearing anything about it. Implement a system making food and other specific cooking ingredients readily available and affordable for those with special diets. So, I don't know. I know that the Honorable Minister indicated earlier o'clock that I don't know if it's the acting AG or the AG will be speaking about the achievements. I don't know why the minister could not have spoken of the achievements for herself. I don't understand that. I would have been excited if it were me. My ministry had achieved so much. I would have been excited to speak about all the achievements in my ministry. So, I think it might be a runaround. It might be a runaround. So, I'm asking, did these 18,000 food cards, did officers visit, to clinically verify that these were people who were not in need of a food card? As you boast about removing them from the system, no doubt you would have created a level of poverty in the population, and again, for which I believe that the government will pay a political price. I just want to go back again to the manifesto, the PNM manifesto, and it speaks about one of the PNM government will thus ensure independent and scientific monitoring and evaluation procedures. How this will happen through a direct deposit system? How will you be able to have an independent and scientific monitoring and evaluation procedure with a direct deposit system? It just doesn't make sense. It's a runaround, really and truly. And therefore, this budget has created a false sense of well-being and security for the most vulnerable in our society. You have clients have been applying for pension months before they turn 65. The government would cut their disability public assistance grant, provided that they were getting that, as soon as they apply for the pension, Madam Speaker. So I'm going to be 65, not me. I'm pretending to be an elderly. So I'm going to be 65 in December. So I go to right now I'm getting disability, and I'm getting a food grant, a food card. So from the time I apply, bam, it got cut. Until I turn 65, and my pension, it doesn't happen automatically because I do all the checks and the balances and check and see I wasn't living away. And if I was living away, I'd get a letter to write from the country I was living in to say that I'm not earning a pension. It's a whole long procedure. So here it is. I have done all of this, and I still have to wait some months, because they have to do so no mind that, I will get a retroactive check, but I would have lost my grant, my public assistance grant, while waiting. And it puts me now, an elderly person whose only dependency, financial dependency, is on this public assistance grant or disability, and I cannot do anything because it has been stopped while they're waiting for that. And I'm saying, if it is that the government is very much interested in really seeking the interests of the most vulnerable, let the grant continue until the actual, approval, and then you move on, So we have to stop. The PNM has to stop blaming the previous administration, all right? I think they should run out of excuses for Kamala. Because right now, she's the best thing since sliced bread. So, we come on to how does this budget go, how will this budget address the irreparable damage done to Tobago resulting from this ferry fiasco? They promised to fix the ferry service between Trinidad and Tobago, you know, but they have not been able to. Every time they speak about a sailing, it keeps shifting. Well, it's 1:30 today. No, it's 2:30 tomorrow. No, we ain't gonna do it again. And there's this continued promise to fix the problem, and they can't fix the problem. So I'm asking, will this budget remedy the situation? Because this budget cannot be just about dollars and cents, but ameliorating the lives of the people, the taxpaying citizens of Trinidad and Tobago. And the reason why I'm raising this fiasco is to highlight from your own manifesto, again, I'm going back to the PNM manifesto, political, page 58, Madam Speaker. It says here, focus on prevention and early recovery in social programs rather than a current focus on maintenance, which offers no assistance in lifting persons out of poverty. And they want to emphasize, it says emphasis on social impact studies and feedback to help formulate government policy. You know, that is fluff. What feedback? The feedback we get on the ground is resign. That is the feedback we get. It continues and it says, while we recognize, heady fluff, while we recognize that the state has an important role to play in this effort, we are fully conscious that governments are not always most efficient or effective in implementing social programs. They should talk for themselves. PP was effective and efficient too. Speak for yourself. And we were creative. And so, therefore, Madam Speaker, we have to ask the question: did we, when we on this side said that the government was inefficient and ineffective, and they say no? But they say so in their own manifesto. They said that. They say we are more fully conscious. They're not always most efficient, effective. And that speaks for them.
It's admission of guilt.
Admission of guilt.
Failure.
So therefore, I think they should stop from now on, the government should stop from now on blaming Kamla for the problems. Madam Speaker, in any sphere of life, business, home, government, there's always a need for transparency and accountability. And a budget must create trust between a government and its citizens. Can we say that this is taking place? And the answer is no. I mean, the honorable political speaker had to ask questions, and the answer was no. The member of parliament for Pointe-a-Pierre asked the same question, the answer is no. And I asked him the same question, it's a different question, the answer is still no. So how would this budget ensure that another Taruba Stadium will not sink taxpayers into a black hole? Speaking about the Taruba Stadium, which recently hosted the finals of the CPL, and again, congrats to the Tobago Knight Riders. But what has been the cost of this facility to taxpayers? Moving from $300 million to just over $1 billion. And what this administration seeks to recover some of this money, or even attempt to sell the facility as an attractive sporting destination so that we can earn some foreign exchange. But I guess they can't do that, right? Because they don't have the proper approvals and accreditation. So what is happening at this facility throughout the year that will be beneficial financially and otherwise to the country's development? Can the Minister of Finance tell us that in this budget? What are the plans for the viability of the National Aquatic Center for Sport and Tourism as a whole? And therefore, you know, I heard the Minister of Finance gave his assurance that all sports will be funded. And I wish to highlight the plight of a young constituent of mine who struggles. She's highly talented in the area of karate. And she struggled, her parents struggled to raise funding for her to attend international competitions. And I might add, Madam Speaker, she has won several gold medals, and this is year after year after year. And while she continues to put us on the map, she has not received any assistance from this government, even though I have written on several occasions on her behalf. The truth be told, I don't think that the government has an idea of how to take this country forward, whether it's through sports or otherwise. And I know I would also like the Minister of Tourism to really share with the citizens the tourism master plan.
Honourable Member, your original speaking time is now spent. You're entitled to 10 more minutes to complete. But before you do, I've recognized a certain trend with respect to your references to members. You'll be well advised to refamiliarize yourself with Standing Order 48.5.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I would like the member for San Fernando East to give us a tourism master plan. And the reason why I'm saying, especially my constituency of Kamoto Manzanilla, you know, I know National Geographic comes to my constituency, Madam Speaker, because they film the white bats. Yes, I will say it every year, because if you haven't done, if nothing has been done, then I have to speak about it. Right. And so they film the white bats in the Tamana caves. And you know what? You don't have to give them anything, you know. You just have to invite them on an official, with an official mandate, because they come unofficially and they do all their filming and they have literally put us on a map. But we can't put ourselves on a map, which is so sad. We have North Orpooch, which has an excellent turtle site, which will cost very little to develop. But it takes an administration with vision and political will to get tourism off of its feet. And so, Madam Speaker, you know, we ask the question, why this government has taken food out of the mouths of babies and children and deprived, you know, the citizens, and particularly, you know, the elderly and all of us. Why have they deprived us? You know, you have a brand new Mercedes-Benz. Is that needed? You have paintings. Was that needed? And, you know, to say that, you know, when the government came into power, the mantra was that fumes in the treasury. Well, how come fumes buy so much of painting, boy? How come fumes could buy painting and buy car, buy tree boat that's not working? How? 6 hours? Fixing house, you know? How can that be? Again, I think it's a runaround. It was a runaround. It was a runaround. In my constituency, you know, it's predominantly agriculture. I saw the amount that was budgeted. That only takes care of recurrent expenditure. Nothing could be done in my constituency for infrastructure. We need roads. What about, and the monies are there, you realize they have no intentions of dealing with Lucy Road's situation after this earthquake with the farmers. Nothing at all. We have so many bridges that are in need of repair. You know, we had a whole, the Honorable Minister for Works and Transport said the pothole, gonna fix pothole. I sent him a whole list of potholes. I didn't even get one pothole fixed. Not even one. You know? It came in, as a matter of fact, I thought it was a carnival ban because it was launched in carnival. The same way it comes, the same way it gone. And so, you know, we have our farmers approximately 3 years have been waiting for reimbursement of the equipment they purchased. With this, only 700 million for recurrent expenditure. Will our farmers get any reimbursement at all for the same incentives. I see the incentives that were decreased by $18,636,000 in this budget. And I ask myself, is this government for real? Do they believe that they can do something with putting, agriculture up on the list? So agriculture can do something, even if it is they don't want to export, it could feed us. Look at what is happening in the world today. You think with what is happening with all sorts of flooding and hurricanes and so forth that nations will look to give us their food? We have to look to feed ourselves, Madam Speaker. And obviously the farmers cannot fix anything with the amount of funding they receive. The farmers still have not received any compensation for flood damage. So you have flood damage for the farmers, and you have flood damage for citizens who have been affected. Again, you're looking at the impact on an increase of gas, of super. The persons, the little workers, who have not CPAP, but have that same sort of concept and going out and making a little dollar cutting grass. It's super gas that takes. So you're affecting small businesses. It is the middle income persons that are going to be affected, and they're going to be literally reduced to a working poor. And it does not seem as though that the Minister of Finance, the Honorable Member for Diego Martin Northeast, is cognizant of that fact. And so we have, even in Pointe-a-Pierre, we have the super gas pumps, and you have diesel. And the diesel pumps which the government has, not getting diesel on a timely manner, and that is happening in the Pointe-a-Pierre Lagoon. So people are asking, what is happening? The increase in gas price also affects the fishing industry because the fishing boats use super gasoline. So it's a lot of people that are going to be impacted by this. And you say, only $1. I just want to touch quickly on my constituency with the Ministry of Education. I have Sagri Chiquito Presbyterian School. We still have, they don't have their school, Madam Speaker. Their class is split. You have the standard, the infants and standard 5 are based in an activity center in my constituency, and the rest of the students, they are based in the Grosvenor Presbyterian Primary School. They're not going in there because each school have a different mantra. They have a different, a different watchword, a different, way of training their children. No matter that they're all Presbyterian, you have a basic thing, but every school have their own way of dealing with things. Ethos. We don't have that. Why is that not happening in my constituency? We have the Manzanilla and the River Government Primary School. 3 additional teachers are missing because they have 2 infants missing and a standard 1. They got 1 infant, 1 teacher. And when the teachers don't come, they have to send the children home. So we have children who are not getting an education. And we could not be happy about this.
They have a new school there.
And we ask the question, why is it that we are not getting our schools in place? Minister of my colleague, member for Caroni East, boasts of building so many schools. Why it is we can't get these schools operational and have the teachers in place? There's so many people who are waiting, who have applied to the teaching service, and they can be employed. Then teachers also do additional volunteer work with the students on evenings and weekends. And it's these same teachers you're asking to bear the brunt of $1. Because they don't drive luxury cars. They drive cars just like, who are using super.
Not Mustang.
Not Mustang. I need my bridge. The farmers have gained their road in Fishing Pond. We want our bridge. We asked the Minister of Rural Development for the bridge. I want our bridge. We have a national security. Komoto Police Station needs a vehicle. The distance from Komoto to Tamina is so vast that you cannot get to there in a timely matter if something happens. We need to have a police post put in Tamina, and we need additional police vehicles. And I must commend them. They're hardworking, they're talented, they're dedicated. They're on the job. I really commend them that in the midst of the fact that they have so little resources, the police station in Komoto leaking and all sorts of things. I go there, look, they didn't come and tell me anything, Madam Speaker. I go and I look, I visit my constituents. I walk around and I don't get wet. And before my few minutes, Madam Speaker, I really need to get some roads rehabilitated. And I'm going to take the time to call out the names until it finishes, because my constituents are very upset. Bonnier Road. Minister has promised to fix it since April. Madam Speaker, I got a letter. I get letters from businesses. I get letter from ERHA saying reference, in your response you indicated that road rehabilitation works along the Bonnier Road will commence in April 2018. I gave that date because the minister gave me that date, Madam Speaker. I didn't pull it out from my hat. I didn't go and give anybody no run or wrong, And so, and as further to this, I am kindly requesting any further updates on same, as it continues to be a challenge. It's a challenge for everybody there. Cars are being destroyed as a result. Flat tires, people have to be buying tires all the time because of the fact that there is Komodo Main Road.
Honourable
Manzanilla
Member
Main
for
Road.
Komodo Manzanilla, your time is now expired. Honourable members, I believe that it's now agreed that we will take the suspension for tea. We shall resume at 6 p.m.